Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Lanny Haybrock here, your Government Affairs Director. Thank you for joining us for our election night live coverage. We have with us, of course, the most famous Adam Sultani, our amazing Executive Director, joining us tonight to talk about what's going on with the elections. And as we talk to some of our exciting guests and just have a good time tonight, no matter what happens. So, Adam, how's your day been?
It has been a busy day. It's been a crazy day, but uplifting, if you will. You know, we had election check-ins throughout the day with some very special guests from the Muslim community. Seeing a lot of people show up to the polls, first-time voters, new voters, people who had just become citizens. Long lines, which we don't know all the results yet, but that means that there are a lot of people taking part in the democratic process. So really excited about that and looking forward to see what the results will be as far as, you know, tonight and into tomorrow, if that's the case. Additionally, looking at some races from around the country, you know, Andre Carson, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, all of them running for re-election in their respective states, all three members of Congress who are also Muslim. So very excited for that. How about you, Lainey? How's your day been?
Yeah, it's been crazy. I have, we did our check-ins this morning, and this morning I went to my polling place, even though I'd already voted. Saturday, I went and I did early voting. And Saturday, I stood in line for 4 hours. But today, when I went to my polling place to check it out, they were only standing in line for about 30 minutes. So my polling place, it was kind of all over the board in Oklahoma. Some places it took a long time to vote. Some places it did not. But I was just happy to see so much excitement going on for today.
Absolutely. Same here. You know, and I really am happy to hear people staying hopeful and optimistic. Looks like we already have a comment. Ahmed Faraz says salam. So salam to you, Ahmed. Very happy to have you join us. And please drop your comments in, you know, if you have any questions or feedback. And we've already got some news coming out of Oklahoma. Although the reports are early, Lanny, I think we do have some, you know, projected results. Do you want to talk about those going on with the presidential race and maybe even a projection with regards to the U.S. Senate race?
Yeah, so definitely all the votes aren't counted yet. It is being projected that, of course, Oklahoma is steadily red every single year for the presidential election. But I keep reminding people that even though you may not feel like your vote counts, maybe in the presidential election, since we're such a red state, we're not really purple whenever it comes to that. But Election Day is more than just the presidential race. It's we have state questions, we have U.S. senators, congressional districts up for grabs. But right now, so they are projecting, of course, that President Trump is going to win Oklahoma, but also so far they're saying that Inahoff looks like he's going to retain his seat for U.S. Senate. But again, we don't know because the votes are not in, and there's still a lot of mail-in votes that may not have been counted yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I really think you have to wait until the final numbers come in. And I think what we should expect tonight is that there's going to be some things that we're going to be really happy about. There's going to be some things that we may be disappointed about, but that's just the way things go. And one of the guests I had on earlier when we did a check-in said it really perfectly. You know, this is not the end, but this is really just another beginning. You know, regardless of who's elected, does not matter which party they're affiliated with, but we have to work with them. We have to make sure that they hear our voice because they are elected to represent us and to work for us, essentially. So yeah, basically, we have to see what the results are going to be. I was looking at some results from around the country, and you know, we get into local results here in just a little bit, but it looks like Andre Carson, who is the second Muslim the second Muslim elected, to U.S. Congress in the history of the United States, looks like he's leading in Indiana with 35% of the district reporting. Of course, there's still quite a ways to go, but that's good news to start the night out with. I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah, and if people aren't aware yet, Oklahoma is on the verge of, we may potentially elect our first state representative that is a Muslim woman, Muslim period, but also a Muslim woman. So we'll see what happens tonight. It's actually my district, Mari Turner. She beat out an incumbent for the primary, and so now she's set to win. It's expected. My district tends to be Democratic. It's still possible, of course, like we keep saying, votes have not totally been counted. Precincts have not been closed out. There's still people in line voting. I'm sure, even though the polls have closed, if you're in line by 7 o'clock, even if you haven't gone in and voted, you're still guaranteed your right to vote. So there's still people trying to vote right now, but Oklahoma may have our very first elected Muslim state representative.
That's right. By the end of the night, we'll see. And I'm just looking at the early results right now. I mean, it's very early because this is just absentee. And, you know, if anybody's interested, just search Oklahoma Election Board, and they have the official results from the Oklahoma Election Board that you can see there. So currently, with absentee mail and early voting numbers, Mari Turner is in the lead at 83%. So right now it's looking good, but that does not include election day numbers. Those will come in last. So still a long ways to go. I mean, even looking at some other districts that we're familiar with, District 87 with Colin Walkie, he's in the lead. Again, no election day numbers included. Cindy Munson, District 85, we're very familiar with her as a friend of the Muslim community. She's ahead by about 30%, I should say. If we could, let's look at News 9. News 9 has some pretty good statistics. If we could get our producer to pull up the stats on a screen share, let's look at what we got going on with News 9. And, you know, all the websites are a little different, but we can take a look at the screen share real quick. And we have some special guests coming up, by the way, so we look forward to that. So there we go. There we go. Yeah, those look like that's the early voting and absentee that we were talking about. It's showing 0% precincts because those election day statistics have not come in. So there you have it. Let's go up to the top, producer, and let's look at the presidential results, and let's look at some of the federal. By the way, our producer is none other than our community outreach director, Natasha Saya. I just like calling her producer. Okay, so as expected, Lanny, any thoughts on that? Looks like right now President Trump has got a pretty wide margin leading against Joe Biden. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's definitely expected. My results are a little bit different than yours. I don't know if maybe my thing isn't as up to date, but yeah, I mean, definitely it was expected Oklahoma was going to vote Republican. Oklahoma was going to vote Donald Trump and continue his presidency. So that's not a surprise there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And CNN is calling it a win, Oklahoma, a win for Donald Trump. So not surprised there. However, Oklahoma is not quite as meaningful in the race to presidency and to getting those 270 electoral votes that is needed to win. Right now, looking at CNN's website as one of the sources for the total electoral wins thus far, Biden is in the lead at 59, Trump at 42, but that's with just a handful of states reporting. So there's still a long ways to go. Of course, Florida, I think you got about 25, 26 electoral votes there. Texas, you've got a lot of electoral votes there. So there's still a long ways to go. Like I said, we may not know tonight. Natasha, let's go ahead and scroll down and look at some of those other statistics for the federal elections. Oh, go back up. We saw Kendra Horn and Stephanie Bice. That's a big one. Everyone's keeping an eye on that. Still early. I mean, right now it shows Kendra in the lead, but with only 6% precincts reporting, I don't think you can label that a win or a loss or anything yet. What do you think, Lanny?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the most contested races in the nation. This race, you're going to see it on the news, on national news tomorrow, I'm sure. The Republican Party in general threw a lot of money into this race to try to win back that seat. If you remember in 2018, when Kendra Horn won CD5, it rocked the political world because it was not expected that she could win, because again, you saw the numbers for the presidential race, Oklahoma, very red, very red, to where we can close it out already and everybody hasn't even voted. We're pretty sure Donald Trump is going to win Oklahoma. So for her to win Congressional District 5 was huge news. And it's a seat that the Republican Party wanted to take back. And so, yeah, definitely we're not ready to close the book on that seat yet. We don't know.
Absolutely. Looks like right now they're projecting Jim Inahoff will win the U.S. Senate seat. We passed on that one. Tom Cole's in the lead right now with District 4. Let's scroll down a little bit. We've got Frank Lucas in the lead. No surprise there. Mark Wayne Mullen, District 2. District 1 is interesting, and I hope we see, those results continually update, because with only 8% of precincts reporting and only about a 4.5% differential between Kevin Hearn and Kojo Azumo-Cesar, that can be interesting. And I'm mostly interested in that for the very reason that the win by Kojo could bring more diversity to the federal level representation from Oklahoma. Of course, he's a African American, and I believe his family has a business in the Greenwood Black Wall Street district. So I think he's a very interesting individual. And look, the numbers just updated. It's gotten closer. Wow. So who knows? I think it's a tight race, and we're going to have to keep an eye on that and see what happens.
Well, and also with that race, Kevin Hearn got that seat just recently in 2018, and Bridenstine had it before. And if you recall, Trump, his administration put Bridenstine in a position for NASA, and so he left that position. So I believe we had a special election, maybe. But anyways, it's important to know that Hearn has not been in that position for a long time, unlike someone like Inahoff has been, or some of the other races. So if a candidate is going to be beat that first election cycle after they get that seat, that's when they're the weakest. So it'll be interesting to see if Kojo takes that. I do want to bring up Fox News website for they're counting electoral college votes. And according to their projections, Joe Biden has 129, while Donald Trump has 94. Now, a lot of states have not closed out. That doesn't include Florida. And it's well believed that whoever gets Florida, that they're probably going to be the one who takes the presidency. But as of right now, we've got Joe Biden sitting with a projected 129. Again, he needs 270 whoever wins the presidency is going to need 270 electoral college seats. And we've got Donald Trump sitting at 94.
Wow, Fox News is reporting different than CNN. And again, I think it's, who knows what will happen, and who knows what the results will be. So we'll just have to, I think, continue to watch. And more importantly, we're going to have to see what the local races turn out to, because I think we'll have some good information on that. And looks like we can pull up those websites afterwards, but I think our first guest is about to come on. So we're ready to have our first guest, and very excited to have a discussion with that individual.
Hey, Alex, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So Alex Wentz is here with us today. He is at the State Question 805 watch party. How's it going over there?
It's going well. It really is a party. I've had to step into a side room here to have this conversation, but we've got a few dozen people here. We're watching poll results and just waiting on an outcome. But we're excited and hopeful.
Great. Well, tell it for those of our watchers who are not familiar with 805. Tell us what that's about.
Sure. State Question 805 is a criminal justice reform measure that would eliminate what's called enhanced sentences. Enhanced sentences allow prosecutors to hand down sentences that are over and above the maximum penalty for crimes. And so State Question 805 eliminates those for repeat offenders for non-violent offenses. So we're talking only about people who are convicted of nonviolent crimes. And the context of all this is, unfortunately, Oklahoma is dealing with a real incarceration crisis where the number one incarcerator of Black residents in the entire country. We're the number one incarcerator of women. Oklahoma is essentially one of the prison capitals of the world, and it's costing us a tremendous amount of resources and taxpayer dollars. And a lot of the people who are in prison are mothers and fathers whose kids are growing up, and what we see is generational cyclical poverty. And so State Question 805 is all part of the answer to solve that incarceration crisis and boost the quality of life in the state.
Yeah, absolutely. And also want to make note that this is a piece of the larger criminal justice reform that we've been talking about needs to happen for years. And so tell us a little bit about the specifics of 805. Should this pass, what kind of impact are we looking at it having on our state?
Yeah, so actually, one of the things that's, I think, really neat about State Question 805 is we have this really diverse coalition of supporters, and we have really prominent liberal voices or progressive voices like Brad Henry, like the ACLU, but we also have conservative voices like OCPA and former Congressman J.C. Watts. And so OCPA actually did an impact study, and what their research showed was that this was going to save Oklahoma taxpayers about $200 million over the course of implementation. And so that's money that could be reinvested into things like rehabilitation and treatment so that people aren't going to prison in the first place, or it could be invested in other state priorities. They also said it would reduce the prison population by about 8%. To give you a sort of the context of that, we're at 100% plus capacity right now. So it would bring it down to, a little over 90% capacity. So it is a modest reform. It's a step in the right direction. It's hardly emptying our prisons out or anything like that, but it is going to reduce some of the really harsh sentences for nonviolent offenses in Oklahoma. And I'm probably talking too much here, but to give you a couple of examples, we've met on this campaign people who've received decades-long sentences for things like stealing a lawnmower, decades-long sentences for writing a couple $100 worth of hot checks, things that aren't. It's not that these are excusable actions. It's just that I don't think anyone believes that someone who's struggling and takes a lawnmower should be serving 15 to 20 years in the state penitentiary. And so this would bring our sentences more in line with our neighbors. We have about 30% longer prison sentences in Oklahoma than in the rest of the country.
Well, and I want to talk about some of the bipartisanship that we've seen around this issue. One of the major players in pushing 805 is Steele, who was former Republican Speaker of the House. So how or why do you think that criminal justice reform has gained such bipartisanship in Oklahoma, especially during such a polarizing time?
Sure. I think there are a number of reasons. We talked about the savings, taxpayer savings, and so I think that that strikes a nerve with conservatives that, hey, we're wasting money, we're not getting return on investment for spending hundreds of millions of dollars on prisons, and we can invest that in people instead. I think there's also a faith-based component too, and I think that's the case when you're talking about Steele. People of all faiths and people of no faiths too, believe in redemption and believe in second chances. And you're seeing Republicans and Democrats and independents, there's I think a growing chorus, not just behind State Question 805, but the criminal justice reform movement in general, that, hey, we can't just throw people away and give up on them, especially people who have like I said before, who are writing bad checks, who have fallen into drug and alcohol addiction and are making bad choices. These are people who can be helped, rehabilitated, and return to their community and their lives, and be productive employees, productive parents, and simply just throwing them away for 20 years is not the answer, especially because a lot of people, when they come out of doing long prison sentences, become the kind of criminals that we don't want them to be. It's not exactly a training ground for good citizenship when you end up in prison for decades.
Absolutely. And interfaith work is something that we do a lot of here at CAIR Oklahoma. Even though we're not a religious institution, we do try to build bridges among different religious groups. So what kind of interfaith work have you seen on this issue?
I mean, we've seen obviously a lot of faith-based groups do work in the community with people who are dealing with drug and alcohol problems. You see a lot of that kind of work, and so they're very well connected groups of all faiths in those communities and with that work, and so they've been very receptive to State Question 805. And we, by the way, CAIR has been very important and helpful in building bridges for us and broadening that conversation and allowing us to talk to people who we might otherwise not be able to. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as a nonprofit, we are not allowed to support candidates or oppose candidates, but with state questions, we can absolutely support those. And 805 was the one proposition that we absolutely supported this year, and we hope to see it pass. Let's see, it looks like we, according to our most recent numbers, it looks like we're sitting at 44% for 805. Is that what you have?
It sounds about right. I'm not able to look at it right in front of me, but what we have noticed is that we performed very well with absentee ballots, and so far on election day voting, we're performing very well in Oklahoma and Tulsa counties. So in our two big urban areas, we have solid leads there, and a very small minority of both of those counties have reported. So I'm hopeful that that number will continue to climb as Oklahoma and Tulsa County come in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, looking at the Oklahoman, it looks like just about 50% of the precincts are reporting, and it's about a 14, 15% differential between the no and yes on 805. So I think we just have to wait and see. Of course, I mean, as an organization, we support it. We hope that it will pass. But you know, I think you can't tell until it's over. Now, I did have a question, Alex. You know, if 805 doesn't pass, what next? And I think that would be the question for people who have supported this and people who, you know, have hoped this would pass. What do we do next as a state?
Sure. Well, we've always said that State Question 805 is, you know, one step in a long journey when it comes to criminal justice reform. So if State Question 805 passes, you know, we'll be overjoyed. If it doesn't, we'll be disappointed. But either way, the criminal justice reform movement in Oklahoma is not going anywhere. You know, as I said before, this is a relatively modest reform, and we are one of the world leaders in incarcerating our residents, not just the national leaders, but world leaders. So there's a tremendous amount of work to do when it comes to solving our incarceration crisis, getting our policies in line with what the rest of the country is doing and experiencing. And so either way, you know, this work will continue, and we're excited to keep working with our partners to make sure it succeeds.
Absolutely. Do a lot of other states have this kind of legislation in place where you can basically be double sentenced for something?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. Enhanced sentences, which is what State Question 805 deals with for nonviolent offenders. When they're available to be used in Oklahoma, they're used approximately 80% of the time. That is exactly opposite of the rest of the country. So in other states, like in Arizona, for instance, which has enhanced sentences, they're used about 20% of the time. So most places that have enhanced sentences, and not every state does, they're used as maybe a last resort or to deal with some kind of outlier. They're not standard. They're not the norm, but they have become the norm in Oklahoma, which is why you see these huge sentences for nonviolent offenses so frequently, and why our prison population just continues to balloon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to an art show, gosh, probably 10 years ago almost, where this photojournalist took a bunch of pictures of women in Oklahoma prisons with their daughters and sometimes their granddaughters that were also in prison. And it just really highlighted how it's such a generational issue here, that it's not just one bad person gets put away for a long time. We create a system in which people are continually just churning, continually going to jail and staying there, and then their kids join them, and then we just create a way of life for people, and it's devastating for our economy and just our society in general.
Exactly. I think it's 1 in 10 Oklahoma children has a parent in prison right now, and so that's a huge number. And of course, those children grow up and are much more likely to become incarcerated themselves. So it's, as you said, it's a generational problem. It's a cycle of, despair and poverty, and it's what we're working to break. So appreciate you giving us some time to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for your work on this. As Adam said, and you reiterated, this is just a piece of the puzzle, and we'll be following this issue throughout the night, keeping people updated on how 805 is doing. But we appreciate you joining us today. Do you have any last words before we let you go?
We appreciate everyone who got out and voted. And as we said before, win or lose, criminal justice reform in Oklahoma is not going anywhere. This is a problem that we have to tackle as a state. And so I think all the groups and individuals and organizations who were committed to seeing State Question 805 pass are tomorrow, regardless of the outcome, going to be committed to more progress in Oklahoma for all the reasons we've talked about, for beating this cycle of incarceration and poverty.
Well, thank you so much for your work on this, and have a good night.
Okay, thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Well, that was an awesome discussion on 805. Of course, we're going to have to see what the results are there. I think it's time to, before we have our next guest come on, I think let's pull up the election results and see if we have any updates. It's getting to 8:30. I know that there were long lines and people still in line after 7 p.m., but I think it's a great time to see where the results stand now. Is that refreshed?
Let's see.
All right. Let's see if the federal offices. So no change in the presidential election. Not surprised. Of course, we know about the U.S. Senate race. We've talked about that. How's the CD5, 15% reporting? Wow. Kendra Horn has taken a pretty strong lead over Stephanie Bice. That's quite interesting. And then let's look at District 1. That's another one we're keeping an eye on. Still very tight there. How about let's look at District 88. We wanted to keep up with that. Let's check on the possible first Muslim to be elected to office. Still 0 precincts reporting. I think with the local elections, Lanny, we may have to wait a little while. What do you say?
Yeah, probably. I'm curious because, well, I guess the precincts reporting is the precincts that are closed out, that they've counted all of their votes. Because I was thinking, how can they know 83%? But I
Right.
suppose that's the closed precincts.
Well, I think those numbers there with 0 precincts reporting, that's your absentee and early voting numbers. So I think we have to wait for the precinct because, I mean, absentee and early voting, it was a significant number of people, but definitely election day numbers could change that drastically or even those numbers out a bit. So I think we're going to have to wait and see how that goes. By the way, I got some news here before our next guest comes on. A race out of Florida. Some of you may be familiar. There was a woman by the name of Laura Loomer who was running as a Republican in the state of Florida, and she lost. And the reason that that's significant is because she is one of the most notorious anti-Muslim individuals, one of the most notorious Islamophobes in the country right now. She was actually, I believe, banned from Twitter for her Islamophobia and her vicious anti-Muslim sentiment. So that's a bit of good news because, it's not about party affiliation, in my opinion. It's not about, anything other than we don't want hateful individuals and people that propagate hate and that are well documented for having done that, to be elected to office, because I think there's pretty clear indication that the kinds of laws that they will be working to pass and the types of policies they will be trying to put in place will not be fair to minority communities nor the Muslim community. So that's a good news. What do you think, Lanny?
Yeah, definitely. And, although we don't support or oppose candidates, we are nonpartisan.
Right.
I think that we can strongly say that we stand against hate, even if it was a Muslim candidate who stood for hating a different group of people. We could not get behind that. I do want to bring up Kentucky's election. That was a big race a while ago because Amy McGrath, she's a Democrat. She was running against Mitch McConnell, who is the U.S. Speaker. And she outraised him in the beginning, but it looks like he's closed out Kentucky and he's won that state again. So he will continue to be in the U.S. Senate. Sorry, he wasn't the Speaker. He was the U.S. Senate Pro Tem. So that was a contested race, but he won pretty handily with 58%.
Very interesting. And yeah, Lanny, like you said, we don't support, we don't take sides. We're nonpartisan, but, our history has always been that we're very clear on a policy level. We oppose hate. It doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter if it's the president of the United States or a House or Senate member or a state level or city level. If you're propagating hate, that is not a Democratic issue or Republican issue. That's just bad politics. And if you're putting people's lives at risk, just like we formerly opposed a lot of the policies and the issues related to the hatred coming from former Representative John Bennett. It wasn't about the fact that he was a Republican. We could care less. We interact with Democrats and Republicans every day. In fact, I would say, as a Muslim, I don't think you can identify Muslims in Oklahoma or in the United States as either Democrat or Republican. I think the reason why a lot of Muslims have gravitated to the Democratic Party has been because the Democratic Party has opened their arms to the Muslim community and not propagated as much hate. I don't want to say that that hasn't existed, but outright hate and bigotry that has been propagated by the Republican Party. So that being said, I think we just have to be clear that Muslims, they're kind of somewhere in the middle, to be quite honest with you, because there will be issues that Muslims will agree upon with Democrats. There'll be issues that Muslims will agree upon with Republicans. But one thing that we never will agree with is hate. So I'll kind of leave it at that because I believe we have another guest coming in. So I'll turn it back over to you, Lanny.
All right. So we'll go ahead and our next guest is Shantae Gilmore. She is the president of the New Leaders Council. It is a progressive young people's group working to get more people to be politically involved and to hopefully run for office as well. Welcome, Shantae. Good to see you again. Oh, she's muted. There you go.
I do that all the time. Thank you. Thank you. for having me. Hi, Lonnie. It's been forever since I've seen you.
I know. So I am actually an alumni of NLC. Let's see, what year did we go through it? 2019? 2018. Yes. So give us an update. What are you doing right now? Are you at a watch party, or what are you up to?
So we just finished a program. We had a program of NLC, the Oklahoma chapter, had a program tonight via Zoom with Greg Robinson out of Tulsa, who ran for mayor, and Devon Douglas, who was a founding board member of NLC Oklahoma. And we were discussing next steps on November 4th. What do we do after November 4th? After everything comes in and emotions are high, and some of us may be extremely excited and some of us may be extremely sad about the election results, but what are the next steps that, as for young progressives, that we can stay civically engaged? So we dissected and went through the whole process of what we can do, and especially in this state, what we can do. So that was our program tonight. So I'll be going to Kendra Horn's watch party a little bit later, and then to our friend's watch party later on. So, but thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Well, speaking of keeping young professionals motivated, it's a difficult thing to do here in Oklahoma because we are so polarized, and we typically, we vote red. And so whenever you're talking about young progressives, what kinds of things are you doing to keep people motivated, just in general, to be politically active?
Yes. So one of the things that I personally do is just to do that one-on-one conversation with individuals. You invite somebody to the table and you have a discussion. You say, let's go out for a cup of coffee. And then the next time you say, let's go out for a milkshake, and that person becomes your friend because now you have spent time with them 2 days or 2 times in a row. And you can build that rapport up with them one-on-one and keep them engaged that way, and educate them and things like that on different things. That's just on a personal level. And then as an organizational level, what I'm doing, especially with NLC and other organizations that I'm a part of, is we are doing meaningful programming in the state. So you'll see, especially with NLC and Urban League Guild and Oklahoma City Young Professional, some of the other things I'm involved in, doing meaningful programming to engage young people in knowing what the state questions are, or what's going on with our local leaders, doing different things like that, so they can be educated and make informed decisions and still keep them excited about the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. And how important is it to continue to have young people involved?
Oh, yes. I mean, if you look at our age demographics, we are one of the largest age demographics out there. We are red, we are blue, we are progressive, all across the spectrum. And so we are one of the age groups that you probably don't want to leave out of the table. So you want to make sure that we're seated there and that you engage us. So definitely keep us in mind when you're making any kind of decision locally or nationally.
And so you said that you were discussing what's next. So what is next? Because, after this election, regardless of who wins, I think what we want is a stronger United States. We want our country to have peace and prosperity. I think we all want the same things. So regardless of how this election turns out, Shantae, what are your thoughts on what should we do next? What are our next steps?
So the next step as an individual is to talk to your friends and your family. Bring them to the table. Let's discuss how we want to do things. Know your community. Go to high school football games. Engage with local people. Go to a coffee shop. Stay engaged in your local newspaper. See what's going on in your newspaper so you can know what's going on in your city, in your town, in your state, things like that. And then, of course, I love organizations, so definitely connect with organizations that are moving the state and city in a positive manner. So those are some of the things that are as far as next steps I would suggest.
Great. Adam, do you have any comments?
Hi, Adam.
No, just thank you. Hi, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for those positive words. I think we have to keep in mind that, one thing I said early on in the program, that elections are not the end, they're just a new beginning, and the work doesn't end on election day. The elections come, we see the results, we take maybe a day or two to breathe, but then we get started and we just get back to what we were doing. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we should not fall into this feeling of being defeated, no matter what happens tonight or tomorrow or in the coming days, whether it's on a presidential level, a state level, or whatnot. We just got to keep working hard and realize the future is ours and we hold it in our hands. And I like what you said about young people, because we work a lot with young people and trying to empower them. And this year at our, right before COVID, shut everything down, we had our sixth Muslim Day at the Capitol, and it was the first time that Muslim youth outnumbered adults, and that gave me a lot of hope. So I think that's the thing, is that we got to focus on the young. We got to keep building, because, hey, somebody asked me before the program started running, will Oklahoma turn into a blue state sometime in the future? And I said, things like this don't happen overnight. Not to say that we're pro-blue or pro-red as an organization, because we're a nonprofit, but change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and I think the best way to do it is by investing in the young, much like New Leaders Council is doing. So thank you for that.
Oh, yes, and that's one of the objectives of New Leaders Council, is to train young progressives across the state. We're a statewide chapter, and yes, we have a component where if you do want to run for office, we will teach you how to do that. But if you want to start a nonprofit, you want to do a profit business, you want to lead in the community in any aspect, we will, we have different classes that we do during our whole cohort that will teach you how to be a progressive leader while we're building the progressive network. One of the things, and Lainey knows this, but, I didn't know I was progressive until I joined New Leaders Council. I showed up at the table, the room, and with diverse people, and I had these views, but I didn't know that other people had the same similar views to me in Oklahoma. And so just to be seated at a table with diverse people that were progressive, and we wanted to make Oklahoma better, was a profound experience. And now New Leaders Council is building that progressive network across Oklahoma. So yeah, so it's one of the best parts of being a part of NLC is connecting with those young progressive leaders in the state, and having an alumni base and a network. So it's been an awesome experience. I've been completely blessed.
Yeah, well, thank you for your work. So before we go, do you want to tell people how they can, if they're interested in getting involved, if they want to be more active, where should they go?
So New Leaders Council, we do have a Facebook page. So if you go to New Leaders Council /Oklahoma, we're on that page, on that social media site. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So we're on all those social media with New Leaders Council Oklahoma chapter. And then if you want to email me if you have questions, we just selected our new class for 2021. So the next class will be 2022, and that'll open up sometime in May if you want to apply. But you can always go to our national website, which is nlc.org.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for the work that you've been doing for young people across the state and for our communities here in Oklahoma.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Okay.
That was wonderful to learn about the work of New Leaders Council, and Lanny, you've been through that. So glad to know that, you've experienced the benefits there. I think we're about to roll into our next guest. So, I mean, what time is it? We're rolling up on 8:45. I think should we just go into the next guest?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I say, why not? This is our favorite guest. So, Natasha, let's get him on.
Hello.
Welcome, Dr. George Young. It's good to see you again.
Good to be seen. Thank you. Thank
Senator
you for the
Young, we
invitation.
should say.
Yeah, Senator Doctor.
George is what my mother named me, and that's what I like best right there. Is George.
All right. We'll stick with that. I mean, we could say Senator, Dr., Reverend, but I know you as my brother, and that's the
right.
most important thing I can call you is my brother, because we love you, we appreciate you, and we're so happy to have you on tonight. It's a big day. And the reason I said, you're one of my favorite guests is because every time I talk to you, I feel like I leave with some, sense of upliftment and inspiration and motivation. And before we get into anything else, it's a big day in our country. We don't know what the results are going to be. We may not know tonight, but what do you hope to see as a result of today's election and in the coming days and weeks?
Well, Adam, trying to walk a line where you really try to always present and propose the positive sides of things. This is a very difficult moment for me in the life of this country, and so I have gotten to the point where, and most folks know that I pastored for 30 years, that my faith had to kick back in a stronger way than ever before during this period, because sometimes to get through some things in this life, you have to be able to have the faith to not have to fight back. So saying that, this is where I am. This is where I am right now. I'm very optimistic about tonight. I'm very optimistic about our future. Looking at the returns so far, a lot of things are happening, but I think that it's still early, and I'm still holding out that before I go to bed tonight, I will have the good news that I really want, and that is the news that will move this country toward becoming more unified and less divided.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what we all want. We just want peace and prosperity for our country, and I don't care how we get there. That's just what we need.
Right.
Absolutely. And I was saying just a little bit ago to Lanny while we were chatting is that, we don't want to see people elected to office that propagate hate or bigotry or divisiveness. And some people take that as a partisan statement. But to me, that's not a partisan statement, because hate is not representative of any political party. It's just representative of certain peoples within those parties, and we've seen that in the state of Oklahoma. But that being said, what are some local races that you're really taking a look at and that you're hoping to see some positive outcomes in Oklahoma?
Well, obviously the big local race is CD5 with Kendra Horn, and so that's going to be a close race. It looks good. The last few minutes when I saw it, it looks good right now, but it's early on. And I hope that she could maintain. I think that's one of the most important races that we're having. The other one is, and I haven't seen many of the results back from, but I'm pretty sure they're going the way that I thought it would go. And that is the county sheriff's race, historical race between two African Americans, and that almost whoever wins is going to be not going. Whoever it will be historical, but
right.
Obviously there are some wishes and wants in that race. So those two in particular, and then the state questions, particularly 805. I have a personal interest in that, and so I'm looking at that. And those numbers are not coming in the way that I thought, but I thought it was a good measure and a good proposition. So we'll see. It's still early, and things may change.
Speaking of that sheriff race, it looks like Waylon Cubitt has the lead. Only 31% of precincts have reported, but we're looking at Waylon Cubitt with almost 55%. And he actually came on our Coffee with Candidates one day. And we've all seen him here in the office. We've seen him speak a few times. And he's always been incredibly inspiring with his outlook on race equity and implicit bias and the role of policing in our communities. And so that's definitely a race we're keeping an eye on as well.
Great race. And he would make, I've known Waylon for quite a while, and you're absolutely right. I'm really, really looking forward to that race, and looking forward to the other gentleman I didn't really know, which says something about that race. I really didn't know him. And so, but I'm glad to see that Waylon has that lead, and hopefully he can maintain it. I think he brings something positive to Oklahoma County.
Absolutely. You didn't actually have to run again this year, because you'll come up in the next election cycle. So how grateful are you that you didn't have to be out knocking doors during COVID?
I don't know if there's enough time for me to get into my thankfulness about that. But looking at it from the outside, it was just an unusual way of. Lanny, it's two things during the COVID. One is, as a pastor, you have to deal with death in your congregations, and pastoral care was all about touching folk, holding folk, consoling folk by physical touch. And with COVID, you can't do it. And so you lose something. It hinders those of us who were taught that way to how we had to find a different way of sharing out grief. Likewise with campaigning, it was just, you take door knocking away. I'm gonna tell you something. You take the heart of that thing away. You take the heart of it away, and so it's been a very odd period to see the campaigns and how they have evolved into trying to get the attention of the constituents.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is strange times indeed, and I can't even imagine how people have managed to handle that. Speaking of history being made, it looks like tonight there's a good possibility based on current reporting numbers and also the makeup of the district being House District 88 that we could see the first ever Muslim elected to state house, which is very exciting. Wanted to get your feedback, Senator Young, because you were with us. And you've been with us every year since we started Muslim Day at the Capitol. You've witnessed firsthand the challenges, the uphill battle we went through just to be accepted as citizens of our own state. So if this happens, what does that mean to you on a personal level? It
is ultimately important because that shows to me, that expresses to me in real life that there are possibilities. So that's what it means to me. I know Marie and had worked with her. I am so excited about that possibility, and to see that it says something. Listen, you got to say it says something about the whole state and not just Oklahoma City in that particular district, but it says something about the whole state. And I think that's the most important thing, is that even though, I'm going to tell you, tomorrow morning when we look at local politics, we won't see a lot of things that most of us who are Democrats really like. But I tell you what you will see is that you will see some spots, some touches where you'll say, we're still breaking through. And I think that's what's happening right now. It's going to take probably another 10 years to recover from what we're in right now as a party. But there are some bright spots. County sheriff's race, Marie, I could name 3 or 4 other events and races that say to me, no, things are changing, and we are. So let's hold on. Let's keep fighting. Let's keep struggling.
Absolutely.
Well, I have a question for you about, I haven't really had a lot of opportunity to talk to anybody about this, but a lot of people, this is kind of the first time we've seen civil unrest, like big time civil unrest, and talking, protests that turn into riots, and it's very scary for a lot of people. But you've seen, you were alive during the civil rights movement and things like that. And so, do you have any messages of hope for people that we're going to get through this, or what is your take? Like what things do you see are in common and what are different? Just what's your perspective?
That's a great question, Lanny, and I have talked about that quite a bit, because you're right. I was in Memphis in the 8th grade when Dr. King was assassinated. I like to say I threw a few bricks too. Statute of limitations run out, so they can't arrest me now. I'm clear. But yes, and so I saw that. But Lanny, let me quickly answer your question. I don't want to take all the time. One, the thing that stands out to me about this is the size of those crowds. Those after George Floyd, the early part of this year, as compared to those crowds in the African American communities. If you look at sometimes the bad black and white videos of those civil rights movement tapes, you'll see, but you can get an idea of the crowds, except for the March on Washington, those gigantic marches, forget those. But we're talking about localized marches in cities. The gatherings that we have had since George Floyd have been larger events in all of these different cities, not just in America, but across the world. Secondly, what was different about it now, some was large. Second, well, it was the diversity of those crowds. When I was growing up, when you looked at the black and white videos of civil rights movement, it's mostly African American. You see a few of the priests who get in the marches and stuff, but when you see the real protesting and the violent stuff, when it gets erupted, it was just black folks. Most of the march, black folks. So that's different, because now these marches have been highly diversified. I mean, there are more white folks in those marches than there are African Americans. And then the third thing that I'll say to you that I appreciate, that is similar, that people don't realize, but it's similar. Young people are leading these marches. Young people have seen what happened with George Floyd when the officer had the knee on the neck and murdered him. And they were not familiar, I don't think, because I spoke to some about institutional racism, but then they saw this pattern that had occurred to African Americans, Eric Garner, now Breonna Taylor, all of those incidents. They began to piece it together as that's what institutional racism is about. It's when one group of folks seem to be getting the same kind of result in these types of encounters. And so they were young. These are young people, though. And so that's where I let off at, because I'm very excited about tomorrow for this country, because young people will be in the positions that I'm in. These young people will one day be running for president of the United States. And if you get those people in, I think we're on our way. So it's going to take some time.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, Senator Young, thank you so much for joining us. I think we're about to get with our next guest, who's going to be coming on in just a minute. But I just want to ask, do you have any words of wisdom that you can leave the people with? You've said a lot of beautiful things, but any words of wisdom as we continue to watch the results come in, and as we, prepare to start the work of tomorrow?
Well, people will joke about this, because Jesse Jackson came out with the term at the Democratic Convention some many years ago, keep hope alive. Let me tell you something. that is hope helps us to survive. Hope gives us the impetus to keep fighting. So he said, keep hope alive. And we joke about it when we say that. But really, you want me to leave you with something. In this moment, right now, as the returns come in, I would say to each and every person who has the faith to believe that we can have better, keep hope alive. Keep believing that things will change for the best. And we'll get through this night, and we'll get through some more nights after that also. So thank you so much, Adam and Lanny, for having me on.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and God bless you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, our next guest is Shannon Fleck. But before she comes on, Adam, did you want to look at some results real quick?
Yeah, let's do that. Natasha, let's bring up the results. Let's refresh them, and let's see real quick where we stand on some things, because, the night is moving on. We're almost to 9 o'clock. Hard to believe that we're already an hour in. And just need to see where things are at right now on a national level. Obviously we're going to be getting discrepancies. We know what Oklahoma is voting for Donald Trump. That's not a surprise. Typically that is the way things go in Oklahoma. It looks like still CNN's reporting 89 Biden, 72 Trump, and Fox News, and I don't know why there's such a discrepancy, 129 Biden, 100 Trump. So that's interesting. District 88, 17%, and Mari's in the lead. Yeah, that's good news. I don't know about you, Lanny, but honestly, I think that Mari's going to be able to pull it off. This is just my prediction because of the makeup and the demographics of that district. I researched it a bit, and it just seems to be that that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I'd say we can call that race.
We won't yet. And looking at Kendra Horn and Stephanie Bice, I think it's going to be down to the wire on that one. I don't think we're going to be able to really know until we get closer to maybe 75 to even 100%. We're just going to have to keep looking at that as the night goes on.
Yeah, definitely.
District 1 doesn't look good for Kojo, but interesting to see still only 56% reporting. So we'll continue to look at that. But I think let's go ahead and let's bring our next guest on board. Very excited.
All right, we got Shannon Fleck. Hey, Shannon. Shannon, if you don't know her, then you haven't been with CAIR very long, because she was always hanging out with us. She is the executive director of the Oklahoma Conference of Churches, and one of our strongest allies and partners. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes, so glad to be here. How are y'all?
Good. Excited.
Hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how have things been? Did you early vote, absentee vote? What did you do?
Yeah, I mailed my ballot in a while ago and checked online, and it was received at the end of September. That's how early I did it.
Wow.
But it hasn't been counted yet. It hasn't been processed yet. So, and I think that's kind of a common story, is that people's mail-in ballots have arrived but haven't necessarily been counted. So that's an interesting dynamic to keep in mind throughout this night.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's why a lot of people are a little bit apprehensive about absentee voting. And it's also why I think that we're not going to know the end result in a lot of these races at the end of tonight.
Right, exactly. I think that's a fair assumption. Nor do I think any candidate should necessarily concede anything until all of the votes have been counted.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a bit surprising that the Associated Press went ahead and called the U.S. Senate race as a victory for Inhofe, and they did it. I mean, at this point, it's not looking like Abby's going to win. I mean, there's still some time, and I don't think it's done until you get 100%. But they called it when 0 precincts were reporting, and I think that's a bit irresponsible. But that being said, I'm curious, Reverend Fleck, you just put out with the Oklahoma Conference of Churches a beautiful statement against hate, against racism, in support of racial justice in the state of Oklahoma. That being said, surely there are some particular things outside of the obvious presidential race that you're looking at with hope for positive change in Oklahoma. So what are some of the races that you're keeping an eye on tonight?
I'm really excited about Maury. It's really exciting to see potentially our first Muslim elected official here in the state of Oklahoma. That's thrilling, especially given, 2 years ago, we were dealing with our beloved imam being refused the opportunity to pray in the state capitol because of his faith, and here we are 2 years later and could potentially have our first Muslim legislator. And that's just really exciting. It's really exciting for the state to see that happen. And, we, as you have already said this evening, OCC is a nonpartisan organization. So we don't endorse candidates, but we have statements on immigration. We have statements on anti-racism, anti-discrimination, statements on poverty and criminal justice. So when we really look at these issues and how they play out nationally as well as in our state, it really informs voting, and it informs the work that we're doing on the ground.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see what happens out of District 88. I mean, it was actually, I think, quite a surprise for a lot of people that Maury won the primary, beating out incumbent Jason Dunnington. And I mean, we, had a great time working with Representative Dunnington, appreciated all he did, especially with reaching out to the Muslim community. But, I think that came as a surprise for everybody. And it looks like she's on her way to win. I'm also very interested to see what happens with Congressional District 5, mainly because, I mean, we all of us here in the Oklahoma City area live in that congressional district. But if, Congresswoman Horn does not win her reelection, then that's really going to change the balance of power here in the state of Oklahoma. And I think, regardless of what people's opinions are of Congresswoman Horn, one thing I have appreciated as a member of the Muslim community is she was willing to sit down and listen to us and hear our concerns. And even if there were things we did not agree with, she still met with us and she had the courage to do so. And I think that's what we need to see more of in elected officials, unlike those who, very well, lock themselves in their offices and hid from us.
Right. Exactly. That anybody who's going to run for office or be an elected official always, I feel like, needs to run with it in mind that they're going to represent every Oklahoman. They're going to represent every single constituent. And we are diverse. We are not unilateral. We do not look one way. We do not worship one way. We are immensely widespread. And so hopefully, no matter the outcome of the race, whoever wins, they will be engaging with everybody on equal footing and not hide and lock themselves away in their office.
Absolutely. What
That
about
was one of my first experiences with CAIR. When we were at the Capitol and we went by Strom's office and we're locked out. It was good times. I knew that I had the job of my dreams that day.
I mean, that was definitely an interesting day and not a norm in the day-to-day life, but it was an important day for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. What is kind of your outlook on these state questions, and did OCC, because I know as nonprofits we can't take positions on candidates, but we can take positions on state questions. With 805, CAIR Oklahoma recommended a yes vote. We did not take a position on 814. Did the Oklahoma Conference of Churches decide to take any positions on those state questions?
Yeah, we did take a position on 805 in support of that state question in line with our beliefs regarding criminal justice reform. We did not take a position on 814. So yeah, I mean, we're still rooting for reform in our criminal justice system. And I was able to watch your speaker that was on earlier speak about the state question 805. And he put it beautifully that no matter what happens, criminal justice reform is still on the table in Oklahoma. That's still work that's going to be done actively in this state. So, whatever happens there, we're still on board to fully support that work.
Absolutely. And, I know you have a young one at home. I have some young children. And one thing we saw in the last few years is this wave of educators getting elected to public office. And personally, I saw it to be refreshing and something that is much needed in Oklahoma in order to secure the education system. But what is kind of your hope, looking at what the outcomes may be, and not just looking at today's results, but even looking into the midterm elections in 2 years, and we'll be looking at a gubernatorial election and things like that. What do you hope to see change in Oklahoma as we continue to do this work of trying to spread peace and understanding and dialogue?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Marilyn, because she's hollering at me from the room behind me, and I'm like, oh my God, can they hear my child screaming? But, public school and public education is so vital, not just for my child, but every child in the state. The public education system is a cornerstone. Can you hear her?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's okay, because that just shows
right now.
God. That shows the importance of family, right? I mean, you're home with your daughter, and we appreciate you for doing this, but I think it's fitting that, we hear her while we talk about the importance of public education for young people.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, and the equality of public education. And that really comes down to funding structures. And that's vital in our state legislature is getting funding structures down pat. Just a minute.
Yeah. She sounds like she's having a great time, though.
Oh my God. She should be asleep, y'all. It's bedtime. Beyond bedtime. But yeah, we have too many districts that are lopsided as far as the funding they're receiving, and public education is not equal across the board in our state. And every child, no matter what, deserves access to quality education. And that's always something that I look at. It's especially something I look at when I go to the ballot, because as a parent, that's key in what I'm looking at is what is her future going to look like? And also, I want her to see role models. I want her to see what she could become. I want her to see, women with, intelligence and authority, and who aren't scared to step into spaces and live into their voice, like she's living into her voice right now.
Absolutely. And I like that you brought that up, because I was talking with someone earlier about Congressional District 5, and I said, you know what? The good news is no matter what the results are, it will be a female. It will be a congresswoman. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think, not just for young girls, but I think even men, even young boys, we need to see women in leadership positions. And I think we benefit as a country from having women in leadership positions. That being said, I know, I know your daughter is, really trying to get your attention. That's why I'm at my office right now, because if I were home, my youngest would not leave me alone. He'd probably be trying to knock the door down. But that being said, give us some last words. Give us some words of advice or wisdom, spiritual or otherwise, that will help us as we kind of cope with the possible results that we may be seeing. Obviously, there will be some good, there may be some bad. So how should we process those?
I think we always just need to remember that God is God, and God has us, and we have one another. And that's the beauty of the interfaith community in Oklahoma. That's the beauty of living in community with people of faith, that we have one another. And no matter what happens, OCC will be here standing up against hate and discrimination. CAIR Oklahoma will be here standing up for civil rights and civil liberties. We are not going anywhere, and this work will continue, and we will continue to do what we are called to do, no matter what the results of anything tonight, or the coming weeks may be. So, keep that in mind. Remember that we've still got you, and we're still going to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, beautifully said. And I appreciate those words, and a good reminder that those of us who are out here and we've been doing the work and we've been struggling for the last 4 years, we're not going to stop. We didn't come this far to just give up. So no matter what happens, we hope for the best outcomes. We rely on God's help for that, but we're not going to give up. And that's not my words. That's the words of Reverend Shannon Fleck. So
that's right. We're not. We're right here, and the mission is too important. So here we are.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out, and thank you for allowing us to engage with you tonight. And tell your daughter thank you for stealing her mother away.
Oh my God, y'all! Sorry. It is what it is, right?
Absolutely. I understand. Hey, take care and have a beautiful evening. Thank you.
All right, y'all too. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Bye. So just got some news. Looks like Jose Cruz won House District 89. Can we bring that up, Natasha? Can we see that? Because if that's the case, that is big news. Jose Cruz, of course, he is Hispanic. First time running for public office, 38% reporting. All right. That's good news. That's great news. And although I'm not sure, is that a final? I need to look on my Oklahoma. I'm going to look at the election board results as well, just to see, because sometimes they can defer a little bit. State District 89. How's 88 looking? Still looking good. Very good. And then I think 87 and 85, let's take a look at those. Those were some of our friends who were running for office in those districts. Good people. Colin Walkie in the lead at 50%. 85, I believe, is Representative Cindy Munson's district, currently in the lead at 63%. That's great news right there. Let's see. Also,
Again,
District
CAIR
83.
Oklahoma is a nonprofit. We do not support or endorse any candidates.
When I say friends, let me clarify. I know we're nonprofit. You're right, Lanny. When I say friends, I mean people who have engaged with the Muslim community. I don't mean people we support for political office. I mean people that have taken the courageous step, whether they're newcomers or they've served in office, to visit the mosque, to engage with their Muslim constituents, to go against the grain, if you will, in Oklahoma. So yeah, I'm not saying as a support, but hey, elections are over. So I mean, I'm not endorsing anybody anyways at this point.
Right. Well, I guess it's too late anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
Overclosed. People can't be influenced.
that's right. That's right. So yeah, I mean, looks like election numbers are still coming in. Jose's in the lead. A lot of good things happening. So I think we just have to wait and see.
Well, a big race. Our next guest is going to be Andrea Stone whenever she gets here, but she's running against Senate Pro Tem Greg Treat, and according to she's Senate District 47, and she has a bit of a lead, 51 to 48. So that's an interesting race. I hope that she gets on soon so that we can talk with her about that.
Well, understood that she may be busy. We'll hope she can join it. It looks like the state election board is showing a 20% precinct reporting, and it's a tight race according to the election board site, which is 50.36% Greg Treat and 49.64% Andrea Stone. Honestly, that's a bit of a surprise, only because I do live in that district, and I really thought as the incumbent, Greg Treat would have a lot more support out the gate, but right now it's coming in really close. In fact, Andrea showing about 2,000 absentee votes more than Greg Treat, which is huge. So those absentee votes may come in handy, but Greg Treat is really winning on the election day results right now. So I think it's anybody's district or Senate seat, I should say, right now.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, whenever you run against an incumbent, even if you don't win, every vote that goes towards you is a vote against the person who's there. And so her doing so well, even if she doesn't pull it out at the end, really says something about what the people of that Senate district want, and that perhaps his seat is, even though he's the Senate Pro Tem, the most powerful person in the Senate, he may not be as safe as he maybe felt 6 months ago. So interesting race.
Absolutely. I'm trying to refresh, but I don't know. The websites are slow. Probably too many people. Yeah. We have an election channel on Slack. Let's see. That's okay. John Hickenlooper projected to flip a U.S. Senate seat for Colorado, which may help turn over Senate to the Democrats. That's interesting. That's definitely going to bring a balance of power to the U.S. Senate. Voter turnout is nearly 60%, with 86 precincts reporting, higher than 2016 presidential turnout by nearly 10%. And currently, Horn leads Bice 51 to 49 with 59% reporting. A lot is happening. The night started out slow, Lanny, and we're getting about halfway into the program, and things are just picking up. I mean, it's exciting and scary at the same time. But I think as predicted, and I'm holding on to my predictions, that there are going to be some amazing things happening in the state of Oklahoma. So I think we're going to be somewhere between incredibly happy and a little bit sad, But hey, right now, I'm excited.
I'm just looking to not wake up. I just want to be able to get out of bed tomorrow. That's all I'm asking for. Okay, well, so hey. Our next guest, Andrea Stone, running for Senate District 47, is here in the house with us. So for producer alert, Andrea, hello, welcome.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
So we were just talking about your race. Oh my goodness, it is a nail biter. How are you feeling?
It's close. I think it's the best we can ask for. I mean, whenever we have a Republican incumbent, President Pro Tem starts the race with $250,000 in the bank, to be neck and neck with 20% of the vote in is pretty incredible. So yeah, wow. We're refreshing the results with everybody else.
Yeah, when we were just talking about your race, about how when you run against an incumbent, every vote that you get is a vote against the House. Basically, it's a vote against who was there before. And for you to be in such a neck and neck race is very exciting. What do you think about your candidacy has been so inspiring to the people in your district?
I think just the idea that a regular person, not a politician, not somebody who is, like a political science major who became a staffer, just a regular person could challenge somebody who many say is one of the most powerful Republicans in the state. I think that part is what's inspiring and interesting, and it makes me really proud for all the work that we've done. I'm a newbie in politics, and I've learned a lot.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that's probably a beautiful thing, when you talk about the opportunity that America presents to people. And, I'm a son of an immigrant. My father immigrated from Iran in 1978 before the Islamic Revolution of Iran. And he came here and got his education, a bachelor's, master's, and PhD. He was able to get a job as a professor at several different universities, raise 3 children, put us through college, and all these things. And we talk about the land of opportunity. That what you said gives me hope, because as a son of an immigrant from Iran and as somebody who converted to Islam at the age of 17, had to live through the horrific tragedy of 9/11 2 years after I became Muslim, and for the last, about 19 years of my life has had to deal with Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment. It gives me hope just seeing where you're at right now tonight. We just refreshed the results a few minutes ago, and I was really shocked to see that, because you're right. A Republican incumbent, and you as an unknown coming into this, it's exciting to see that, and wish you the best, obviously. But whatever has happened, I think you've made a huge impact already.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My grandparents, was a school lunch lady and a carpenter and a milkman, and a substitute teacher. And so I look at that, and it's amazing how we can take these leaps, and everybody's dream kids will have a better opportunity than that. And I'm just thankful that voters have really investigated the race and learned about me, spent the time, and I think that more of that is great, because that's how candidates like me can put our ideas in front of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's especially super surprising and exciting in that, we're looking at the election results, and 85% of the precincts have reported, and, our Republican president is owning 65% of the vote. And yet, whenever you come to the Senate pro tem, you're leading as a Democrat by a couple of percentage points. And so, I think that speaks volumes about how important local races are, and about how important it is to be in touch with the people that are in your community. And I know that education was a big deal for your campaign. Can you tell us what role that has played, and what you've seen whenever you've been talking to people about how important education is to people?
So there's a group of parents out of Deer Creek and Edmond that put out a survey asking about, especially kind of how are we going to support public schools, and what are we going to do about epic charter schools and that kind of thing. Senator Treat didn't fill that out. I took the time to fill that out, and I think we're at a kind of a decision point in our state between how do we handle public dollars going to public schools versus public dollars going to private schools. And so I think we're at an inflection point. I think people are voting on that. Of course, I have 2 kids that are public school kids, and I'm also paying college tuition for both of them right now. And so I think that's kind of the next frontier. I do appreciate that Senator Treat has also tried to run on education. So my hope is that I pushed him to be more moderate, and he's had to kind of sound like a Democrat in some regards when it comes to education. So, we still have a long night ahead, but at the very least, I'm optimistic that no matter who is going to be in this seat, we'll have someone who is very pro-education.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and what are you able to watch any of the other races or take questions? Are you able to do any of that right now, or are you just so freaked out about your own?
I'm watching the national returns. They're on right now, and then we're. Can you turn it down a little bit? There, it's kind of loud actually. So we're watching those. We're watching the state questions coming in as well, and then looking at some of my favorite Democratic candidates that are up and down the ballot. I think Kendra Horn looks like she's holding her own, and so that's great. And I share a campaign manager with Christina Chikaraski, and so we're touching base a lot, and her race is looking really good too.
And
Wonderful.
what do you hope to see for next legislative session? Kind of what are your hopes, either, on a state level or even a federal level? Kind of what are you just hoping to see for our country and our state next year?
I think everybody needs to come into this with a spirit of bipartisanship and a drive to heal our state and our nation. So I'm hoping that we can, work together. And I think that means at the leadership level kind of coming to the table and not going to our corners. So I'm hopeful that we can translate that into some really good policy making at the state level. I think we have really big challenges with our healthcare system and with Medicaid expansion and how that's going to go, how we're going to fund that. We're going to probably have a little less revenue than we anticipated. We're still facing a lot of deficits from this COVID emergency. And then, just going forward, how do we handle the pandemic, and even what is the legislature going to look like whenever it comes to January, I think is a big question, right? Like, are we all going to be able to meet, or what, So I think that, the pandemic is still going to kind of encapsulate a lot of what goes on at the state and federal level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also why people are so concerned about this election. Is it's not just that it's another presidential election. It's not just that it's another 4 years, but I think people with COVID, it's really kind of upset the foundation of what we know to be the norm. And so I think a lot of people are maybe not as excited about the future, but there's a lot of fear in the air. And we really need leadership who is going to help people feel safe in their communities, right? And so I appreciate every time I've spoken with you, I have gotten that vibe of I got this, like I'm going to take care of things. It's going to be all right. And so I really appreciate this through everything.
I'm a very logical person, and I think the only logical thing to do is to get through this pandemic, secure our health, and then work on dealing with our economy. And we can't have a strong economy until we secure our health. And, even basic things like expanding the number of rapid tests. It's so hard to get a rapid test in Oklahoma City right now. So basic public health measures we need to have our leaders talking about. And so, I'm looking forward to being part of that conversation. Regardless of the outcome of tonight, I will still be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, I can say, I live in the Senate district where you're running for, and, of course, wish you the best of luck in the results. But win or lose, if you win, I look forward to working with you as my senator. But if you don't win, I am greatly appreciative for, pushing Greg Street maybe out of his comfort zone and challenging him a bit, because I think that's how we grow and that's how we learn. And hopefully, if you don't win, maybe you can kind of rely on the hope that you've made him into a better senator for the people he's meant to serve. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Whoever takes this position, and you've mentioned that many times in what you said, but whoever takes this position has to be ready to serve the people. And one thing I think we're growing tired of as a country and as a state, hopefully, is people getting elected to office and not fulfilling their obligations. And so thank you for what you've done, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, Senator Treat has become more moderate. He was talking about equity and, dealing with police violence, and he, in the debate that we had on KOCO. And so, I think we don't want to allow these seats to go unchallenged. So I am thankful for the opportunity and look forward to the results of tonight.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. And as Adam said, if we get to work with you in the future at the Capitol, great. But if it's with Moms Demand Action, then that's great too. So we'll definitely be seeing you in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I hope to have y'all in my office in the Senate office building here in just a little bit.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a good night and think blue.
You too. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been amazing, Lanny. I mean, I can't believe we're about halfway through, and I think we need to look back at some of the results and see. I just refreshed results on my end, and 65% of the districts reporting, and Congresswoman Horn is in the lead by about 3%. That's what I'm seeing on the election side. Let's look at News 9, what they're reporting. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm seeing. The same thing on my end. That's pretty interesting. I still think it's going to be neck and neck for quite some time. Let's take a look at Senate District 47, is it? And see if there's any update there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get Natasha to pull that up, and let's see.
You can search Stone. That'll pull her up.
There we go.
Okay.
28% reporting, still neck and neck. I think that's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those numbers are not much, you know. I mean, you look at the percentage, but you also look at those numbers. And for a district like that, I mean, it only takes a couple hundred votes to sway it one way or the other, or to balance it out a little bit. So that's interesting. I don't see any updates on the presidential results. I'm not very hopeful we're going to have a definitive answer tonight. I mean, both CNN and Fox News are still reporting the same numbers they had before. 129 Biden and 109 Trump on Fox News, 89 Biden and 72 Trump on CNN. I think we just shouldn't hold our breath on that one. I think we'll just have to wait and see. But we'll continue looking at the results. Already got some good news that some of the races are going in a positive direction. So while we bring on our next guest, I'm going to make a list of some of these races where we've been following, and I'll make sure after the break, at the next break, I'll bring some updates. So Lanny, you want to go ahead and get ready for our next guest to come on?
Yeah, so our next guest I'm very excited about is Alyssa Fisher. She is with Sally's List, which our guest we just had, Andrea Stone, is actually a Sally's List candidate. Sally's List is a nonpartisan organization that works to get women elected to run for office. And so Andrea Stone was one of those. Very excited to have you, Alyssa, on our Election Night Live coverage. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an amazing experience to have Wi-Fi, so I'm glad to be here.
Are you still out of power?
Girl, I just got on power yesterday, but I still do not have Wi-Fi, so we win and we lose. I'm grateful. So.
Yeah. Well, so tell us about what you're seeing from your end, because you have a whole different set of candidates than what we're watching. So what are you seeing tonight with your women running for office?
There's a lot going on. Right now, the race I'm really, really keeping an eye on is Christina Chigurski for Oklahoma county clerk. It's county clerk, yes. And that's a tight one. I mean, it is going back and forth, and they still have quite a few ballots to count. So
yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So Christina Chigurski is at 49.9, and then her opponent is 50.1. So they're like,
I mean, it's
the closest race I've seen on here. Yeah,
it's less than 600 votes, and I think that just speaks to important it is that every single person votes, because we are looking at so many races across the state right now where it appears that it might come down to the wire. So, I mean, I just hope that everyone did their mail-in ballots correctly. I know I was very anxious about that, so, keep an eye on it, but it seems to be going well for Christina.
Yeah. And how many female candidates did you have this election cycle?
Oh my goodness, of course you asked me. I completely forgot at this point. But we had several incumbents. I think we had about 15 new candidates this time. But oh no, 15 incumbents and 6 new candidates, I believe. But yeah, we had a good number of incumbents who seem to have held on to their seats. We have Melody Blansett, we have Cindy Munson, and it looks like Chelsea Branham is going to be able to hold on to that seat. That's another one that I've been keeping an eye on. But it's been a very busy time at Sally's List. I think that our vision has been so long-term in the past several months that we are continuing to build sort of the long game. So this election cycle is, we're hoping for the best, but really we know that the battle begins again tomorrow. I mean, it's not over, and it's never going to be over. And so we just have to focus on the long-term game and pick ourselves up with whatever happens tonight, and keep hitting that brick wall until it breaks.
Absolutely. Well, and we've been talking about one of your candidates, Mari Turner.
Oh my God.
Well, and one of the main yes. One of the main reasons that it's so important to have women elected, and women who look like you. So for the Muslim community, if Mari wins, which it looks like it's pretty much a done deal, can't totally, but I call it. It's like 88%. Yeah. But, I mean, it's such a win, not just for women, but for the Muslim community, because since you work in this, how important would you say it is to have somebody in positions of power that looks like you?
There's no way to describe how important it is that people feel like they are genuinely represented in a position where the sole reason it exists is for them to be represented. I just think about how we're seeing more representation and sort of commercialized things for children or people who are attending movie theaters or whatever, movies or whatever. But it's like, what really we need to be focusing on is making sure that our places of civic life accurately reflect us. Because until they do, like Mari says on her campaign, nothing about us without us. And for too long, our state has been run by people who do not live the lives that I know I'm living. So I am very hopeful for what Mari is going to be able to accomplish at the Capitol, along with many other of our candidates who are continuing to excel during this cycle. So there is momentum. I think that that's the thing I'm stepping away with tonight, knowing that we are momentum. Just like an avalanche starts with a few small pebbles, I mean, we are on our way to making some significant and meaningful change in this state that is so desperately needed. So, I'm very excited. I think that despite will be lulls and moments of sadness inevitably as any elections period goes. I'm looking at the state question 805 in particular. That is really rather, heartbreaking in many ways, but there's still time for us to fight. So I'm not giving up hope.
And I think you kind of brought up something that made me think about the reality of having to take the wins with the losses. And I think that's Oklahoma, right? I mean, we have to take the wins with the losses, and we have to look at the positive things. I mean, Mari Turner, if she ends up winning House District 88, not just a Black woman, but a Black Muslim woman, I never envisioned that the first Muslim to run for and win office would be a Black Muslim woman, because typically speaking, you look at the makeup of the legislature, it's majority men. So you would think a Muslim man would stand a better chance, but she's breaking barriers left and right. And she was endorsed by Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who broke barriers left and right. And I just found out that Ilhan Omar won re-election in Minnesota. So there's some good news right there that we can go ahead and celebrate, because that's a done deal. 99% reporting, and she smashed the winnings right there. I mean, she got 64% of the vote, and the Republican candidate only got 25%. So I think that's good news right there, and that's something we can definitely hold on to.
Yes, absolutely. I think one thing Mari does so well that so many of the candidates Sally's List works with do well is meeting people where they're at. I mean, just fundamentally meeting people at. not expecting for them to be really interested in what you have to say as a candidate, but saying, how can I serve you? How can I help you? What do you need? Tell me what my role is in your life.
Right.
And that is definitely needed. I think even more so currently, given the, an ice storm and everything going on, is really reaching out to your community members and being engaged in a way that is based in servant leadership. And that is just absent in so many ways in our state capitol, in our city halls, on our school boards, and in so many other places where power resides, both in our state and in our country. And so if this is the trend, if this is the movement that we are starting to see at the local level, at the state level, then I'm walking away from tonight happy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. You talk about how the people who represent us need to look like us. And I think that it just goes to show how much work needs to be done on voting rights and voter accessibility. Because in my mind, the reason why we don't have that, why primarily power is held by a specific group of people who look a specific way, is because the ballot isn't as accessible to everybody.
Absolutely.
And so are you all, I know that Sally's List primarily works to get women to run for office and to get elected, but are you all planning on doing any work on voter accessibility, or is that just kind of something over here that you don't really have the capacity to deal with?
I mean, we are typically like a one lane, one mind, like we have one job to get it done. And so I don't know if that's going to be something we would expand our programming into, but I completely agree with you. I mean, it is criminal. It is criminal that we are expecting people to sit and wait in lines for hours to be able to exercise a right they are guaranteed by the Constitution. That is criminal to me. I think about, my poor mother, she had to stand and her feet were hurting. And she's an able-bodied person. I'm just imagining someone who needs to use the restroom, who has children, all of these different variables that impact people's ability to have their voices heard. And, I don't know what the answer is. I know that there are political scientists and social scientists who probably have written so many books about this and have so many wonderful ideas, but I can only hope that that is something that is on the agenda of every Oklahoman, and it's something that we are all interested in helping organize and get behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I voted early because I didn't want to have to stand in line all day today, because I knew that I had this going on all evening. And Saturday, I stood in line for 4 hours, and I had a coffee, and best believe I had to use the bathroom pretty bad by the time that was over. And and I was just lucky to have cool people in line with me to keep me entertained. And it went by pretty quickly because there was a lot of excitement, but like it's a big deal to have to stand there in line that long. And whenever I was telling Adam about it, he was like, that just shouldn't be the case. There has to be a better system. And actually, the guy that I was standing in line with, he said that he had called the election board and he wanted to volunteer to be an poll worker. And they said, no, we already have enough. And I was like, then why am I in line for 4 hours?
Right. Well, we can't even get I don't know how you can fix the election day issues or early voting issues if you can't even fix the fact that we passed a law saying you could register to vote online, and yet for whatever reason the state of Oklahoma cannot get the system up. To me, that's ludicrous. I think we have to find a way to bring Oklahoma into the 21st century and get these things moving. But I agree. My mother, I'm 37, so I'm not going to put my mother's age out there, but I'll let you guess. But, she works as a physical therapist at a big hospital here in Oklahoma City, and she went and worked all day, took off early to go vote, and still had to wait more than 2 hours to vote. I mean, this is just unacceptable, and something has to change. I don't know how, but hopefully we can see that change in the next few years.
And, you know, I think it's really important that we explore what other states are doing. I mean, there are, like, for example, the state of Washington is mail ballot basically only. In fact, my boyfriend just moved back from Washington, and there are ballot boxes all over town because they understand the ballots are mailed to you, like no questions asked. I mean, if we had a state that actually was invested enough in its own people and democracy, and the health of its democracy, I should say, to mail every ballot and make it easy and safe for us to exercise our right to vote.
Right.
What a world. I can't even imagine, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while we have you on here, I know you don't have your notes in front of you or anything, but
So sorry.
no, it's okay. But I want to look at a couple of the races of Sally's List candidates. And actually, I can pull up the Sally's List website.
Sure.
And we can.
When I say my boyfriend just moved back, I mean, he literally arrived here 3 hours ago, and I just finished moving him into my house. So,
oh, wow. Welcome to a house without power or without Wi-Fi.
It's been a whirlwind of a week, you know, but here we are. We live and we survive.
Okay, so some of your newly endorsed candidates, Abby Broyles.
Yes.
We have been watching her race.
Yes.
Unfortunately, she looks like she is not going to pull it out, but she did a phenomenal job. I mean,
and you know, I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, hope she runs again.
yeah,
I'm telling you what, if she didn't get it this time, she can do it. I have faith in her. I think she's an incredible person and an incredible candidate, and worked so hard.
yeah, she really did. And she, she responded to our request anytime we asked her to be on like our coffee with the candidates and different things like that. Like she showed up for us, and she usually whenever candidates go to mosques, it's because we set up that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw on Facebook it pictures of Broyles with like Imam and Chassis, and we were like, we didn't even set that up, and we were just so happy that like
yes, I mean, really, I'm telling you, every woman we've worked with ever is a servant leader at heart who genuinely wants to help and represent and serve their community. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then let's look at the other race that you had mentioned, Chikareski. She's 49% to 50%, so that's doing that. And then let's see, who else should we look up?
Yeah, there are several who are, it appears, I mean, Joanna Dossett, I think, is probably one of the most impressive.
You said Gossett?
Dossett, pardon me, Joanna Dossett. They have 91.6% reporting, and she is up by less than 1,000 votes.
Wow.
Yes, and that is in the heart of downtown Tulsa. That has been a tight race, and Joanna, whew, she worked that district. I mean, if I have faith that she will pull through with that, because she has just outworked everyone. I mean, she's incredible.
That's amazing. Let me look. So that's District 95. So I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Actually, it's 35. Joanna Dossett.
35.
35. Pardon me.
Okay. Let's see.
An update on Mari Turner with 66%, 67% reporting. She's up 74% to 25%. So I think we will have the first Muslim elected to public office in the state of Oklahoma, and it's incredible, and just look forward to seeing what she does. I mean, she's an amazing person. She was our intern at CAIR Oklahoma. She served on our board of directors, and now, I mean, just to see where she's come from being a student at Oklahoma State University to doing this, I'm almost speechless. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, Maury, I think she texted me right before she decided to start to run, and she was like, hey, I kind of want to talk to you about something. And so she came over and sat at my kitchen table and was like, I think I might run for office. And I was like, flips table over, like, let's
Amazing.
go, let's make it happen. Like,
I know, unbelievable, and I think that just goes to show you, we had Andrea Stone on before this, and I think that just goes to show you that no matter what, this is possible. And I think people just have to have the courage. And that's what I've told people for years.
yes.
You just have to have the courage to do it. And when I tell people, hey, run for office,
Yes.
they turn around and say, hey, Adam, you run for office. No, I have a job, and also you don't want somebody who works in civil rights and gets labeled as all kinds of names for, because when you work in civil rights, you're going to get negativity thrown at you. That's not the kind of person you want running for public office. I mean, look, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't run for office. Malcolm X didn't run for office. A lot of other civil rights, even Linda Sarsour, who is one of the amazing social justice advocates for the Muslim community, she's not running for public office because we do what we do well, which is social justice, which is civil rights advocacy. But we're not the right people to run for office, at least not at this point. Maybe if I retire and if Oklahoma changes a little bit, that would be fine. But yeah, I'm not ready for that at this point in my life. And I don't think I'm the right person for it either.
I feel you 100% there. I mean, I think that it's really important that that we build a movement where everyone has a place. And it is not my place, certainly, to run for office. And I am so excited to see that, amongst this movement for progressive change, more social justice in our institutions of civic service, I think finding places for everyone and making sure everyone knows that they have a role and they have something to contribute to both our democracy and our community's health. That's so, so important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I wish this has been amazing, and I wish we could continue the conversation, but we have other guests, excited to be on the show as well. So thank you for taking time out, and thank you for even, traveling to a different location to find Wi-Fi access and hope. I know. Hope everything gets fixed up for you. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you for doing this. You're such a blessing. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye. Yeah, so I was just looking up Trish Ranson's race, and Trish has been a friend of the community. She's come to the Stillwater Mosque a couple times, and I
wrote her name down. I dropped my paper. She won.
She won, 100% of the precincts have reported, and she won with 52%. So it was a tight race, but she pulled it out. And so we're excited to work with her again.
That makes me happy, not only because I know her personally, and she came to the mosque in Stillwater, but more than that, if you remember, Lanny, I was it earlier this year? I think it was this year before COVID became an issue. And when she and I spoke together at the Stillwater Community Center for the Martin Luther King Day celebration, she's a person of the community. And that's my thing. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about somebody who's really ingrained in the community and represents the community. And that's what I really admire about her. So happy about that. I have some other updates. I know we've got another guest to bring on real quick. Looks like Shane Jett, somebody that we're familiar with. He's been engaging with the Muslim community for a while. Looks like he's on his way to win Senate District 17. Senator Duggar on his way to win Senate District 21. And we know him because he came and accepted our invitation to attend Jummah prayer at the Islamic Society of Stillwater. We mentioned Representative Ransom. We have Representative Bell, won re-election in House District 45. Representative Rosecrans won House District re-election, House District 46. Representative Pay House District 62 won re-election. Representative Brewer, House District 71, and Representative Jason Lowe, even though it's not reporting 100%, he's so far in the lead. Looks like he's going to win re-election at House District 97. And these are all people I specifically mentioned because they have joined us at Muslim Day at the Capitol at our iftar. So we greatly appreciate him. But we'll get to more updates later. Our next guest, Kyle Lawson, he's been waiting long enough. So Natasha, let's get him added to the stream. There we go.
Hey,
Lanny, I'll turn it over to you.
Welcome, Kyle. Thank you for joining us today. How are you tonight?
I'm not well, but I'm here.
Well, I love the pearls.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, tell us, what have you been up to today? How has Together Oklahoma been? Do you guys have a watch party going on? What are you up to?
Together Oklahoma does not have anything that we are particularly watching during this this election cycle. So no, we're not having a watch party. Me individually, about 6 o'clock, I started pacing the kitchen in circles, walking around, anxiously awaiting some results. And if you look at my Google search, you can see the word election just keeps getting refreshed because I'm watching, and I'm panning between the national election and our state elections because, I have a lot of friends at the Capitol who were running for re-election. I'm excited to see Representative Bell's reelected. She'll be singing at my wedding in December, so that's pretty cool. That she'll be there. But I'm excited that she got reelected. Yeah. But she was doing a fantastic job, and it was the right choice. And I'm just anxiously awaiting the results. I know that me as an individual, I was watching State Question 805. Yeah. I know that that campaign was going up against a very large block when the sheriffs and the district attorneys came out against that very staunch. And there was a really strong misinformation campaign that 805 had to go up against. And I think that they did a phenomenal job running their campaign. I think they worked extremely hard. I think it's now to kind of circle back and say, okay, this didn't work. What's next? And how do we advance and continue to work towards criminal justice for the state?
Yeah, absolutely. We had one of our first guests was Alex Wentz with the 805 campaign, and we talked about, this is just a small piece of criminal justice reform. It would have been great to have gotten that accomplished, but we keep fighting no matter what. And that's the same thing with all of these issues, with all of these candidates. It whatever happens tonight, we keep fighting no matter what. And it looks like, are we frozen?
I'm not frozen. Are you frozen? I think Kyle got froze.
Okay. Oh, that's too bad. Well, maybe he'll pop back in a minute.
Yeah, we'll have to wait to see. So, real quick, let's look at some updates. I'm excited. Looks like he might try to pop back in. It's probably just a Wi-Fi issue.
Mm-hmm.
CNN is reporting right now an update on the president. Oh, I reloaded. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so Fox is reporting 133 Biden, 115 Trump. I think this is just the way it's going to go. Yeah. Excuse me, and CNN's closing in on Fox News as far as the numbers go. They're now 118 Biden, 105 Trump. So I don't know. It's still anyone's ball game, so to say. But the results here in Oklahoma, let's get a quick refresh. Oh, Kyle's back. I'm gonna look at that while we get Kyle back in the stream.
Hey, welcome back. So let's talk real quick about your work at Together Oklahoma.
Internet's being a little wonky.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad you have power. That's good. Oh, looks like it froze again. Oh, okay. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your work with TOK?
Can you hear me?
And yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about what TOK is doing and what you all are going to be working towards come November 4th.
Yeah, so Together Oklahoma is a nonpartisan coalition of citizens throughout Oklahoma. We're funded through the Oklahoma Policy Institute. Going into November, we're going to start working with our chapters to identify what policy priorities they're interested in working on going into legislative session. So most of November, we're going to be spending time visiting with our chapters, identifying what issues are important to them. And then leading into December, we'll start kind of power mapping the legislator and see how we can best approach those policy priorities going into the 2021 legislative session.
And have you all, do you all work on criminal justice reform every year, or does that change whenever you talk to your different groups?
It really depends. As TOK, historically, most of our chapters are extremely interested and engaged in working around criminal justice reform. It's been a top issue in most of our chapters for the 2 years that I've been with the organization. And I definitely foresee it being an issue that's the forefront of the conversation, especially with 805 not passing. I know a lot of our chapter members are going to be very interested in continuing that work at the Capitol and working with legislators. And it would definitely be interesting to see them partner with the sheriffs and the DAs to kind of get their feedback on what the pushback against 805 was and how we can correct that going forward.
Yeah, because as you said, the pushback on it seemed to stem from misinformation. And so trying to get everybody on the same page, because when we were talking with Alex Wentz, you know, criminal justice reform has essentially been pretty nonpartisan. I mean, Steele, former Republican Speaker of the House, is one of the main leaders in that. You know, so was it OPAC or came out in support of it. So I mean, we have it is a bipartisan issue. So trying to get to the heart of, hey, why didn't we all get on board with this? I think would be really important, and maybe we'll come out with even better solutions because of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime we run against barriers like that, I think it's super important to step back and say, where did we go wrong? How do we correct it? And how do we find that common ground for everyone? And I think we're going to spend a lot of time in this legislative session working on that and working around criminal justice reform in our state, because we still continue to lead the nation in our incarceration rates in many areas. And if we want to continue to create a more prosperous state for all Oklahomans, I think that criminal justice reform needs to take the forefront of the conversation going into legislative session.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you hope to see from your chapters this next year, and maybe from the legislature? I know that you don't have your priorities yet, but is there anything outside of priorities that you hope to see?
So I'll be honest, I'm super nervous going into the 2021 session because we don't know what that looks like with COVID restrictions. You know, last session ended extremely quickly and a lot of work was left at the wayside. So I'm kind of nervous what 2021 is going to look like, especially for advocates. Where's their space at the Capitol during a pandemic? And I don't think this is going away anytime soon. I think it's going to continue to stay with us through legislative session. So where is the advocate space when it comes to legislation being crafted? Right. Especially with rules like not being able to live stream from the House and the Senate floors on your devices. I went to take a picture one time during a legislative session, and you know the usher came along and said, "Hey, you can't do that." And I think that's a barrier, especially going into 2021 for advocates and their opportunity to have a voice and see what's going on in the Capitol. I mean, I know that it's streamed live on the website, but I think to create equity, we need to allow individuals to be streaming from the House and Senate floor this session, especially with a lot of the COVID restrictions and individuals not having access to their legislators. And I think it's going to be a lot of work for us as an organization to help create those pathways to get our advocates to their legislators' doors, even if that's virtually.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a good point that as advocates, it may be a big part of our job next year to try to ensure transparency with the people in power. You know, I remember last year, Forrest Bennett getting in trouble for tweeting during session, and hopefully that's something that can change this year, because, you know, it's just so what's sort of hypocritical, because you have people talking about, oh, transparency in government, and yet they're the same ones saying, don't bring your phone on the floor. No, even as elected official, you can't live tweet this session. Like, it's just it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I often joke, and this is not directed towards any one specific legislator, but in general, I often joke that the Oklahoma legislature learned transparency from the Red River. It's pretty murky for anybody that doesn't know. Yeah, transparency is not there, and I think that we as advocates need to fight for that and make sure that there's transparency in our state government and we know what's going on. Last session, we saw a law enacted within a week after the Supreme Court made a decision on notaries for ballots, and that there was no law in place, so therefore the election board couldn't enforce that rule. And within a week, we saw it become a law. It was tacked onto a bill that had absolutely nothing to do with voting. It made it through the legislature so quickly that our advocates had very little time to reach out to their representatives, and the thousands of Oklahomans that were calling their legislators, it was so confusing because it switched, I think, between 3 different bills.
Yeah.
What was going on, and so we had people calling for one bill, and literally within 24 hours, it was on a completely different bill that I always said was a viable host for that amendment, and it passed off of, I think, finally the Senate floor. And within minutes of passing off the Senate floor, the governor signed it with absolutely no time for advocates to call and ask him to veto that bill. And I think that shows that there's a huge lack of transparency in our state government. And I think advocates need to show up this year, however that may be, and hold their representatives accountable this legislative session, and kind of break that barrier and create that transparency and create that table. And if they don't give you a table, last year Together Oklahoma, we drug our own table into the Capitol, so we can drag tables in there and set them up.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and I look forward to doing that. Honestly, I'm excited about next year. I do think that we will have a fight on our hands with, especially with COVID, because it's very easily to take advantage of that and to hide things from people, and to use it to assert power, just like how you were talking about that bill concerning notaries. Because I remember it was within 24 hours that House and Senate leadership drafted that bill and just pushed it on through, and it was a done deal, like you said, in just a few days. So, and that's what we're here for. We're here to point that out to people and try to fight against that. So I'm looking forward to it. Do you have any final thoughts on, any messages of hope for our viewers?
I'm super proud of Oklahomans and individuals throughout the entire nation for the voter turnout that we saw this election cycle. People showed up, they turned out, they stood in line for hours to get to their polls, which shouldn't have happened, but they stood in those lines and waited. And I'm extremely proud of Oklahomans for doing that and turning out. And I look forward to continued voter turnout. And I hope that they realize that just during presidential elections is not the only time that we need strong voter turnout. Every single election that happens in this state, individuals' rights are on those ballots. And it's important we show up and we elect representatives that will continue to fight for those rights and those individuals, especially within the marginalized communities. So turn up, show up for every election. The best way to do that is to sign up for an absentee ballot. You have to renew that every single year at the beginning of the year, but every single election that goes on in your community, that ballot comes to your mailbox and you will never forget it. So
yes, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that reminder. Absolutely.
Thank you, Kyle, for joining us, and have a wonderful evening. Appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate everything you do with Together Oklahoma.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
You too. Wow. Well, Lanny, real quick,
Yeah.
I know we have our next guest coming on, a good friend of ours, former representative with the House, Oklahoma State House, Joe Dorman, now with Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy. But real quick, some exciting things are happening. Looks like we've got some more wins. House District 79, Melissa Provenzano, House District 85, Cindy Munson, House District 87, Colin Walkie. These are not 100%, but they're close enough that I'm calling them. I'm just saying we're good. Mari Turner, I don't think it's going to go any other way than a win, and that's history in the making. I mean, I don't think it's quite hit me yet, but that's amazing. Jose Cruz, House District 89. Mickey Dollins, House District 93. Andy Fugate, House District 94. And I think we're still waiting. You know, Chelsea Branham and House District 83. Of course, Chelsea has been a very strong advocate for a lot of minority rights in Oklahoma. It's a very tight race. I need to refresh and see House District 83. 94% of the precincts. Yeah, she was in the lead. It doesn't look good, but you know, we got to take, as we said, we got to take the wins with the losses, and it looks like tonight's going to be just a night like that. So I think without further ado, let's just go ahead and bring our next guest on, and maybe he can give us some insight into what we're looking at right now.
Hey, welcome, Joe. How are you tonight?
Doing great. Good evening.
Good evening. So we have with us, if you didn't hear Adam's introduction, this is Joe Dorman. He's a former representative for Oklahoma and the current executive director for the Institute for Child Advocacy, my former boss when I was working there with Kids Count. And he has a lot of insight into the political process. So I'm super excited to get started with him, to hear him talk about what his perspective is on these races. So Joe, first of all, what are you doing tonight? You sitting at home? Are you part of a watch party? What's going on with you?
Because of COVID-19, I wanted to stay at home and just watch from the computer, watch the national returns, and then also keep track of what's happening at the local level. And there have been some significant changes of what we're going to see at the Capitol. Adam covered a lot of the bright spots, and I really don't want to go into the negative ones, but we probably should. It's looking like right now the House Democrats could be in the teens, dropping from in the 20s down to the teens.
Right.
It was a tough night for them, and we're still waiting. Allison Eichley Freeman, one of the senators in the Tulsa area, she won a special election, and it looks like in her regular time around on the ballot, it's not looking like she's going to be successful. There is still one race that we're waiting on with Joanna Dossett, the sister of Senator J.J. Dossett. That one is neck and neck with 3 precincts remaining. I've been texting J.J. and he won't respond. So hopefully they're on pins and needles with good news.
Yeah, it's an exciting night for sure. And I keep telling people that, you know, Oklahoma, whenever it comes to the presidential election, Oklahoma is pretty much a done deal. We're going to go red every time. But this election is not just about that. There's so many other races that are going on. There's state questions, there's judicial retention seats. It's so much bigger than just the presidency. And so having been an elected leader, having been somebody who's run for office every 2 years and had to do that, what are your thoughts on this year, people doing that in the midst of a pandemic?
This was like nothing else that we could have imagined. Really, we haven't seen anything like this in 100 years with the pandemic, where candidates could not be around voters and they had to adjust. That meant a lot of money came into these races. A lot of dark dollars were dumped into significant races at the local level, at the legislative level. Jacob Rosecrans down in the Norman area speculated that $200,000 worth of dark money was dumped against him, and he ended up pulling his race off by only 80 votes, about ballpark 80 votes. And it makes a huge difference in those areas when so much money floods in. We, of course, saw it in the congressional race on TV and a little bit through the mail, but in these local races, the legislative races, it makes a big difference. And it's happened for several years. It's just this year, it seems like it was more prevalent because the candidates couldn't respond with the retail politics of going door to door.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we've been talking with our other guests tonight, no matter the outcomes of these races, even if it went totally the way that you or I had wanted, our work is never done. It's never going to be done. And you work with this for a very specific demographic of children. Children do not have a voice. Children cannot vote. And so what are some things that you hope to see in the next year for children?
With the defeat of state question 814, that's going to leave a huge budget shortfall as far as what could go into Medicaid. Now, we've heard the positives and minuses on both of the state questions. With 814, the legislators who deal with the appropriation side, they were hoping to have that money. Since they don't, they're going to have to look at doing some fee increases, other creative ways to get revenue. Otherwise, we're going to see areas of the budget that we don't want cut, probably see some significant cuts. And so that's something advocates are going to have to speak up and be a strong voice at the Capitol to protect the programs that are supportive of the children, of the people who are trying to get back on their feet. With the economy that we're in right now, we can't afford to have any of these people suffering. They need that assistance to get them back on their feet until the economy can recover. And so this is going to be a tough time for advocates who are working on those issues like we do.
Are we expecting a budget shortfall for next year?
It's looking like it, just based upon the economy of what we've seen because of COVID-19, with gas prices dropping around the nation. That has a drastic impact on Oklahoma. Whether you like petroleum or not, our economy is built upon that. And when we see a drop in gas prices, a drop in production, it hurts our state revenue. And that means it hurts the programs that support Oklahomans, including education and healthcare. And so we have to monitor that. The word out of the Capitol is it could be a pretty tough year this next year.
And so what are some of the things that you worked on in the last session that you feel are going to have the biggest impact on children this coming year?
It feels like it was decades ago.
Doesn't it?
It does.
Just the way that the world has been. And of course, the session was shortened by about 6 weeks, and they came back and passed some of the emergency bills, some of the ones that Kyle talked about also. We've been working on trying to protect school suspension policies. One of the silver linings that may come from COVID-19 is schools now know how to do distance learning. So we're hoping to shift some of the out-of-school suspension policies to instead see them do virtual learning opportunities for kids where they're not sent home. Because oftentimes these kids are sent back into abusive situations. That's one of the problems we're seeing with COVID-19. Abuse rates are down, but we know they haven't dropped. We know that the people who report that most often, usually the teachers, the kids aren't around them. So a lot of bad things are probably happening out there. We just don't have that proof. We do know that the abuse cases that have been going to the hospitals are significantly worse than what we've seen in the past.
That's terrifying. And so for next year, do you have any policy priorities or anything to deal with that specific issue of child abuse?
Funny you mentioned that, and this is a good time to pitch. Our fall forum is coming up November 16th, and it's an opportunity for advocates to have a voice. At Fall Forum, we assemble advocates to discuss issues and shape our legislative agenda. So if people want to have a voice, especially with an advocacy program like OICA, this is the chance to have your voice heard and get active. We're going to have several policy breakout sessions. Several lawmakers will be in attendance and participating with these. So you'll get to have that opportunity to visit directly with those lawmakers. But it's going to give you a chance to have your voice and get something included into our legislative agenda. We're going to have a pretty aggressive legislative agenda this next year. We have no question that the needs are there and we've got to have a stronger voice. And OICA, we feel like, has been getting a much stronger voice. We were active in the Medicaid expansion petition, which, as we know, that ended up with a very close vote in the election. We had some great partners that worked with us to make sure that we got the message out about how Medicaid expansion would help children and families. We're wanting to try and be even more aggressive with that and try and push forward some solid policies. EITC is one of those issues that we certainly want to try and bring up again, the earned income tax credit, which is a tax credit for working class Oklahomans to put a little bit of money back in their pocket. Common sense, physical programs like that benefit Oklahomans up and down the scale. And so we want to make sure we're active with that at the Capitol.
And is the fall forum, is that just open to anybody? Is it open? Okay. And where can people go to find out where that is and find more information on it?
We're going to do fall forum this year on Zoom. We're going to do it for 3 or 4 hours each day over a 4-day period. The first day we're kicking off with our awards recognition, and we'll have a panel of state agency lawmakers, state agency directors. We're going to have members of the court. We've got a fantastic 4-day lineup with this. People can go to oica.org and check out the information there, or they can go to our Facebook page, Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy, or drop me an email at jdorman@oica.org, or I'm sure they can reach out to you all and you can pass them along to us. Absolutely. We want to get more people involved with this conversation because just like voting, the more voices that are active and are heard, the better the result.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that information. And thank you for the work that you do for our state and for our children and just your continued civic engagement and influence. We really appreciate that.
Well, likewise, we appreciate everything y'all are doing at CAIR. Our loss was CAIR's gain when y'all got Lanny from us, when we lost the Kids Count Project. I am glad to see she is still active. And Adam, it's always a great pleasure to get to work with you on these issues. If anyone has any issues that we can work with children, we often joke around we have the toughest job at the Capitol. We represent 900,000 Oklahomans, and not a single one of them can vote because they're not 18 yet.
Right.
So get involved with us, and we'd love to have you a part of the mission.
Sounds great. Thank you, Joe. We appreciate everything you do. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Y'all have a great night, and let's keep our fingers crossed for some good results.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye.
So, Lanny, it's official. Maury Turner, 100% reporting.
Okay.
First Muslim elected to public office in the state of Oklahoma.
Yes.
I can't believe it. Just absolutely crazy to think that, 5-6 years ago, we started our Muslim Day at the Capitol with protests and a former legislator that called me a terrorist, just because he hated Muslims without anything to back it up, just trying to throw everything out there. And now here we are. I mean, Shannon.
When I remember when I interviewed with you in 2018, we talked about our goals and different ideas, and I said I want to see a Muslim elected to office, but not just any Muslim. I want to see a Muslim woman, and I can't believe that it's already happening. I expected that to happen like maybe in 5 years. I didn't expect it to be right off the bat. So it's so exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't think we actually had a plan. I'm not going to say what that was, but we had a whole plan, to kind of map out the process of running for office, and still, something we will work on. But it's almost funny in a way that we never even got a chance to put that down on paper and put that into place because COVID threw everything off this year. But, this is just outstanding news. And I think this is the perfect time to bring in our next guest, someone that probably would be happy and celebrating with us, our good friend, Reverend Cherie Dickerson, the executive director for Black Lives Matter, Oklahoma City. So good to see you, Cherie. How are you this evening?
Just listening to that confirmation about Representative-elect Maury Turner, my heart is just literally exploding with joy. I have always adored Marie as a person, as an ally, as one of the sheroes of this community, and to have a Black, queer, gender non-conforming Muslim person in 2020. So it does say that we are still experiencing first as Black people and as Muslim people in this country. But what an amazing first to be able to celebrate tonight.
Absolutely.
So what are you up to tonight?
Tonight, and please excuse my somewhat uncoiffed appearance. I'm still one of the persons here within the local area without power. And so, but yet I have been very blessed to be part of the team helping establish and kind of hosting a temporary sheltering place. So tonight, we're kind of running around trying to figure out what we're going to do because we're at City Presbyterian, but we only are able to be here for one more night. So we're having to tell everyone, and we have about 6 families and almost 20 people that we're still able to share community with in this manner, that we have to find appropriate temporary housing for, at least for the next couple of days. If that text that everybody got was correct, hopefully by Friday, our power will be restored. So
yeah,
that's the real Oklahoma plight. We're celebrating victories. We are still dealing with a state and government leadership that seems a little bit tone deaf in some of their celebratory statements, calling things a little bit too soon, but also have we forgotten to be concerned about the residents and the constituency that are still dealing with this deficit without power, that have lost a lot of their foods and things like that. So that's what I focused on tonight.
Absolutely. Cherie, it's a little hard to hear. I don't know if you're using your phone, maybe bring it closer to you.
Is this better?
That's much better. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure.
My phone because we don't have Wi-Fi where we are.
Oh my goodness. Oh my, it's just unbelievable. I just can't believe this, that there are some people who didn't lose power at all and some people who are going almost, a week, 10 days.
Over a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the 10th or 11th day for a lot of people. And so I realize how blessed that many of us were to have places like Ebenezer Baptist Church and City Presbyterian that opened up. But even in situations like that, I guess we just define temporary a little bit differently. So we're still having to find other accommodations. And BLM OKC, we are committed to taking care of these families that have entrusted their care to us. So I guess maybe also I should be sending out a plea if someone has space or ideas. Please send me a message and let me know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you really bring it down to what it's like for a lot of Oklahomans right now, that a lot of Oklahomans, they don't have the privilege of really even caring about who's president because they just need power and basic necessities. And at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like it, but that's what elections are all about. It's about having people in leadership that are going to lead and that are going to take care of the people. I want to talk about your work with Black Lives Matter. What kinds of things are you working on right now, and what are you expecting on November 4th? It's such a scary time, up in the air. Do you have any expectations or hopes or fears?
I try not to focus on apprehension, but of course we have to be responsible. And Dr. Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. We had those that are currently committing this fraud or facade of leadership that call for white supremacy and white nationalist groups to stand by and put them on alert that says that they are directly targeting a lot of our communities, the Muslim community as well. And so we've all made security and safety plans. We are going to implement those. We're having to do that in the middle of a pandemic where our leadership did not correctly focus on making sure that Americans and their constituency and residents of their states are protected. Oklahoma, we never shut down. And so BLM OKC, we're also focusing on the needs and providing resources for everyone in our intersectional communities. There is a very diverse group staying with us. We did make sure that everyone who was able to had the opportunity to vote today and early if they wanted to over the weekend, because we've been together for about 6 or 7 days. So I've extended my community. We also are focusing on how we're going to hold those elected to office accountable for correctly and just ethically making sure that they are representing everyone within their districts, within the counties. And we're preparing for the next set of elections that are coming up because they are crucial and important. And making sure that while people like Marie and those that are the first, that we bring people onto the team that gives them a better collective or coalition to be able to represent all of us across this state and kind of change the face of Oklahoma so people can see who we really are.
Yeah, Absolutely. That's a good point. I think that Oklahoma is actually a lot more purple than the polls realize.
That's right. And, you know, I think you really hit on something very important, and that is that there's always another election. And, you know, we've been saying this over and over again. And I think now that we see the results rolling in, we see some people, you know, getting reelected that have served the state well, that have served their constituency well. We see some good people that lost. We see some still neck and neck races like CD5, which everyone's watching. But I think at the end of the day, the thing we've said over and over, and a lot of our guests have said, is that this election is not the end. It's just another beginning. And, you know, you and I have worked together closely for a long time. And I started back in 2014, 2015. I started a real in-depth study of systemic racism in our country. And I think that's the thing, is that we have to look at the real issues. Elections come and go, but we have to look at fixing the real problems that plague our country, the societal ills that continue to cause issues such as, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, xenophobia. All these things are related to the root cause, which is white supremacy that has existed in our country since its inception. And I think we just have to keep working and fighting for what's right.
Oh, for sure, Adam. It has been a privilege and an honor to work with you, to work with CAIR. I was very excited when Laney came on the team because I know that we are all aware of what our purpose and our mission is.
Right.
And that bringing equity into our various communities to where we aren't just fighting against voter suppression, but we're fighting against having an inadequate and erroneous census to where census dollars are actually allocated to all of our communities equally or equitably.
Right.
And those are the type of things that we see within institutional and systemic racism that people don't realize. When our communities don't have enough flu shots at the clinics, it's
Right.
because the census was inaccurate. And I thought about that watching my good friend Joe Dorman, who was a partner. OICA was a partner with my organization, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, running the campaign for Census Oklahoma. And so I've been so aware of how many things we got a lot of work to do and how many things we're going to need to change. So elections should be the catalyst and a call to action to say, this is when the real work starts.
Wow. Wow.
And you
Amazing.
continue that.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Lanny, anything else before we let Cherie go? I know it's late. We don't want to keep you up too long, and we're getting near the end of our program. We've been on for 2.5 hours, but honestly, having amazing people like you, it feels like we haven't even been on that long because we've just been engaging in positive conversation. And I think this is a great way to spend election night, rather than having to stress out by worrying about who may or may not be the next president. We're just, focusing on the future and focusing on continuing this amazing work that we're doing, and the fight goes on.
For sure, we're not going to give up. We know that we are very lucky to be in community and have a coalition of amazing racial equity and social justice warriors like yourselves, and those in organizations like Matriarch and DAOK and OICA and all of those. And so I think, like you said, spending tonight with my friends and fellow co-conspirators in trouble, it's been a mighty good night.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope and we pray that you'll get power back and everything will return back to normal. I can't even imagine how difficult that situation has been, but if there's anything we can do to assist, please don't hesitate. We are your friends, and we appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, and congrats to all of our victors. And that's not based on whether or not you win. It meant that you put your name on the ballot and you fought for change for Oklahoma. And I appreciate and honor you.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Wow, Lanny. I mean, this has just been an amazing night. We're getting near the end. I know we have 2 guests left. I think Imam Inchasi is going to probably be our last guest, but I think we can just go ahead and bring our dear friend Charles DeCoon on. We'll just go ahead and get him added to the stream, and let's kind of see what's going on with him. And I know he was running for office. So Natasha, if we can get him added to the stream while we wait on. Hey, Charles, how are you?
Hi.
Good. How you doing?
Good. So good to see you.
What was that?
Good to see you.
Yeah, same here. It's kind of a sad night, but I'm happy to see you guys.
So are the results in for your? There's been so much stuff going on. I haven't been able to check in the last hour. The latest. What's the results for your?
Yes, I got about 45% of the votes. So, yeah, give or take, I think I'll end up around 45%. Yeah.
Wow.
We're sure 88% have reported, so there's still some precincts that haven't closed out yet on your race, it looks like.
Yeah, but it's not gonna. Yeah, I'm not
44
gonna make it up to 50. So yeah.
Well,
a little sad.
Oh, go ahead.
What's that?
I was going to say, as Cherie said, I think you're a winner just by your willingness to run for office and the courage it takes to do that. And the reason I say that is because I have tried for years. I mean, now tonight we just announced a little bit ago that House District 88, Mari Turner, first Muslim ever elected to state house, possibly public office in Oklahoma. This is history making, but it's been a long road and it's not been easy to convince people to try and do this. So you're a winner in my books. And we had a great conversation with you on our Coffee with Candidates. And I greatly admire, your outlook and your priorities. So thank you. Thank you for showing us that it is possible and we all need to have the same courage that you have.
Yes. Well, thank you. And, ultimately we need to keep on trying. I think what you will see is, Oklahoma County is getting more diverse, is getting a bit younger. And I think, I have children in high school, and I can tell there's definitely a change there. Our young kids who cannot vote yet, once they can vote, they will definitely vote very differently from the way Oklahoma County is voting today. So I'd like to think that we kind of getting things ready for next time. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting close. It's not like I got 20% of the votes, right? I got 45% or so.
Right.
So it's not always going to be easy. There was a lot of money spent on the other side. Fundraising down ballot is never easy. I'm really happy with my numbers overall. I wish I could have gotten 6 or 7% more, but overall, I'm really glad I did it. It was a very important race. A lot of people that my staff and I talked to were very clear that they want their voice back at the table. And actually, I just put a post on my Facebook in which I welcome my opponent who now won. I welcome him to please consider bringing people back to the table. I think regardless of your party, regardless of your beliefs, it's important to allow your citizens to speak to you. Even if you're not going to agree with them, at least allow them to speak. And I'm hoping that my race allowed our current court clerk and our court clerk for the next 4 years to realize that, yes, it's okay to allow people to speak, right, even if ultimately he might end up not voting the way they might have wanted him to. At least allow them to express their feelings or their beliefs about something. I'm hoping that this race will have helped him realize that there's a need there.
And we were talking to Andrea Stone, and we talked about, whenever you run against an incumbent, every vote that you get is a vote against the incumbent. And so just by having a competitive race, the hope is that whoever wins will be a better representative, because the fact that you were within a 10-point range speaks volumes to the places that your opponent was lacking and the voices that he wasn't listening to. And so hopefully this is an eye opener to, hey, here's some issues and we need you to do better, because the next time you may not be so lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I'm willing to talk to him. I've invited him to reach out to me if he'd like to listen to some of the suggestions I gave. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to be angry about the situation. I want us to serve our community, and I hope that he will do just that.
Yeah, well, and as the theme of this entire night, if I would sum it up with everybody we've been talking to, it has ultimately come down to, no matter what happens with these elections, the work is never over. The fight is not over. And we have to continue to fight for justice. We have to continue to make sure that our voices are heard. And even if every race and every state question went exactly the way that we wanted it, we would still wake up tomorrow with a lot of work to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the number one thing. And that's the takeaway, is that the work is never over. And I mean, we're still holding out on what's going to happen on the presidential side. And I think, pretty soon we're going to have to sleep and not maybe know, most of us at least. But yeah. Charles, I know it's getting late and appreciate you being on, but want to kind of just ask you, because I had such a great conversation with you when you joined our previous show. What are some words of wisdom? You've been a part of this experience. And so in relation to the fact that you ran for public office and kind of the political situation, knowing that already we've got some good things happening in Oklahoma, some concerning things that maybe didn't turn out the way that we all wanted them to. What are some positive words or words of wisdom that you can leave us with as we kind of close out the program tonight?
Well, I mean, what I will say is just keep on trying, keep on trying to get heard. do it in a positive way, but get your voice heard. I mean, keep in mind, people who are elected to represent you. So speak out, but do it positively. Do it so that they understand you're not just an angry person wanting to throw the government away and to have a revolution. You're just a regular citizen who might have a good idea, asking someone who was elected to listen to them. So continue to do that. Do that positively, but be firm. And eventually they'll start to listen. I mean, we're seeing at the county, things are happening. The $25 million of CARES Act money being returned, that's because people were firm and said, guys, there's something wrong here. So continue to do that. Again, I would say just do it, be positive but firm.
Beautiful. Well said. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for staying up late and joining us. And we, like I said, we appreciate you, and we appreciate, your courage in running for office and setting a good example for all of us to follow. And please do stay in touch. Would love to have you once, we get past COVID. We don't know when that will be, but would love to have you come out to some of our events and be able to introduce you to some of the rest of the Muslim community.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right, Lanny. Oh, wow. We're getting there. We're ready for our last guest, but yeah, I think we're just going to end up signing off without knowing who the president is. It's a tight race. Biden's leading. Trump is, hanging in there. It's a lot of major states still to be decided. I'm tired. I don't know that at this point, I really would just rather probably go to sleep not knowing, because there's one scenario in which I won't sleep if I find out, and there's another scenario in which I'll be sleeping soundly. So I think I'd rather just not know. But
go to bed.
Go to bed. Absolutely. And I think we're really going to have to analyze, in the coming weeks, what the local elections really mean for the state of Oklahoma. But Natasha, let's just bring in our last guest. Who's more fitting to be the final guest on a CAIR Oklahoma program? None other than our favorite guest speaker. I'm just going to recline back now. I'm comfortable. I'm relaxed. Imam Imad Shasi. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam. I just want to let you know that I really, really made a covenant between me, and myself, to not watch anything and go to sleep. Then I said, oh my gosh, I have to speak. I'll be the last guest speaker at CAIR Oklahoma. So here I am.
Alhamdulillah.
I peeked a little bit at some of the results. And, I'm really happy to be with you. So.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think that the only result you need to be concerned with is the fact that Kanye West got 5,000 votes in Oklahoma. That's pretty interesting. There's some people that held out hope for Kanye to win, I guess.
Well, yeah, I know that. I don't know what to say about it. This is somebody wanted to vote, not necessarily going to vote for anyone, but okay. Whatever.
Well, good news is that, we saw, on a national level, we saw Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she won, Congressman Andre Carson, he won re-election, and Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, it's not done, but she's leading by a pretty wide margin. So on a federal level, we still got some pretty strong representation, which I think is very important to have.
Yes, I've been watching some of these sneaking in and looking at these numbers. So that's awesome news. We are blessed to have those represent us, to have a vote at federal level.
Absolutely. So are there any other races that you've been keeping an eye on, or are you just trying to stay away from knowing what the results are and just kind of go with the flow?
Well, what no matter what flow is, I just want people to be at ease. the sun gonna shine tomorrow. I promise you that, right? So if people not getting the reference that tomorrow the sun gonna shine tomorrow, whether you candidate or our candidate wins or does not win, I think winning is defined by us doing everything we could only possibly do, and then leave the rest to God Almighty. I'm at ease. I don't think I could do to vote my conscience and to enrich people around me and so on. And the results are gonna be some people gonna be happy, some people not gonna be happy. What we need to be as people of faith, we need never ever to give up hope.
Right.
This is a statement. I love the story of Jacob. Jacob, as he lost his son for years. He was stealing his children, saying, "No, he's gone. He's perfectly gone. He's aside." And Jacob, in that moment, a blind old man, he said, "Never ever give up hope," because giving up hope is basically saying God is not able and capable to deliver. That's really what hope means. So for we done we think it is. We'll leave the rest for God Almighty. That's why the sun gonna shine tomorrow. And anything that happens is good for us. The work does not stop, no matter who wins. The work continues to. We continue to struggle. Social justice is a lifetime commitment. There isn't a prophet that came to this earth without a social justice message. So that ought to tell us something. From the time of Adam all the way to Prophet Muhammad, all those messengers came with a strong social justice message. As long as there's society and people in it, there's still gonna be people standing up for what is right, and people trying to take advantage of other people. So there's always gonna be that social justice issue that we're gonna have to fight for, no matter who is in charge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those words of hope.
I'm here because my computer froze.
So see, you're already practicing never giving up hope. So yeah, I see you there looking at me, and I said, "What happened to Adam there?"
I know. I don't know. It's the most bizarre thing, but you know what? Perhaps it's fitting because we're coming up on 3 hours of broadcast, and I think there's no better way to end it than that, Imam, is just holding on to hope. And if you're still watching with us, go to bed. Go to bed, because at the end of the day, we're going to continue hope. We hope in God Almighty. We hope in being optimistic. And I think also putting things in perspective, we recognize that, these are challenging times, but there's never been a time in existence. And Imam, you taught me this. There's never been a time in existence for humanity in which there haven't been challenges. And one of the tasks God has set us with is that we have to be up to the challenge, and that's part of the test of being faithful. So I think we just have to keep hope alive and keep pushing forward and doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Go to sleep with the sun gonna shine tomorrow. As I said, we're gonna wake up in the morning, no matter who wins, still gonna be struggle, local or national or international struggle. There's always gonna be injustices somewhere. And there's always the people of God that stand for justice.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Imam. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for staying up late. And we always appreciate everything you do and for always keeping us focused on the ultimate goal.
So much. And thank CAIR Oklahoma for everything. You guys going to have some work to do. All of us there.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Take care.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Well, Lanny, I'm here with you because my computer froze, and it is what it is. But any last words you want to give the audience before we close out?
I think Imam and Chassis closed us out perfectly. You know, at the end of the day, you just have to wipe your hands of what's not in your control anymore. And we've done everything that we can do. Everybody who went out and voted, you know, thank you. And we appreciate you all watching tonight. And just may you have peace tonight and may you have sound sleep.
Amen. I have nothing else to add. Thank you for watching. Have a good night. The fight continues. We'll be here tomorrow, no matter what the ultimate results are at the end of the day on any level. And we'll keep fighting. We'll keep hope alive. Have a good evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night.